So, Off the Beaten Path, episode 2. Weston.
My name is Weston, Off the Beaten Path.
Scotty, which you remember, and then we have
Mike Bieda. Yeah, that's right, buddy.
Mike Bieda.
First client,
first guest.
That's the word I was
super
looking
excited. So, to introduce you, I've been thinking for the last couple of days what I would say, and the story that I think I want to tell. So, we met each other at work.
Yeah.
And the first few times, or like the first
I
way that I remember you.
Yeah, you were really kept to yourself. You had that funny hat. You looked like you were bleach blonde. You're balding.
That's that.
And you're kind of mean to me. You weren't like making eye contact. You'd walk right by me. I'd be like, "What's up, dude?" You'd be like, "Brutal carriers are no good." That's kind of the vibe of you.
Sure. Yeah. That's, it's so weird that you say that because now we have like such a good relationship.
Right. But you know how it started? You remember the comment you made about the push-ups?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Okay, go ahead. I'll let you take it.
No, that's all right. So you were having a conversation with somebody else.
Yes.
And I overheard it, and I made a comment about you, like making fun of you for doing push-ups in the locker room.
Right.
And I was like, he's got big guns because he does push-ups in the locker room all the time.
And then, you want to be friends?
So we started talking back and forth, and I think we talked, in that conversation, it was almost like a miniature podcast in the first 20 minutes. I think we stood there. I was on the clock, by the way.
Yeah.
And we started talking for 25, 30 minutes, and eventually James, our boss, came up and was like, hey, you got to get the hell out of here. But we talked about CWD, we talked about Lyme disease, we talked about my injury, happened to me, which I want eventually to do an episode on that, but probably not the topic or not the thing to talk about today.
An episode on what, your injury?
Yeah, the TBI and that whole thing. But we'll find an appropriate time to do it, I think. But that was a conversation where we started off with all this lighthearted shit, and then somehow we dropped instantly into a deep conversation, which is my favorite. That's part of the reason that I wanted to do this podcast is when I started talking to people in the sauna at my gym, the people I love talking to, you sort of have surface level conversation, and then instantly you get past that, and it's just the deepest stuff going on in their life, and they'll share with you, this is what I don't want anybody else to know about me, kind of thing. So I did that with you, and I told you, hey, this is what's going on, and I think the main part of the conversation from me that I can remember was I was sharing with you how I felt about how I treated my mom during that time, because she was my primary caregiver after my injury, and I was really embarrassed, upset with myself of how poorly I treated her during that time. So I was sharing that with you, and it was really difficult, and I was tearing up, crying, and we at this point literally have said hello to each other 5 times. And the thing that you said where I knew that you were not only an excellent but an empathic listener, right, was you said to me, because I'm sitting here crying, I'm sorry, this is hard for me to share. You said, it's okay, you're talking to me, I know how this feels. And I was like, holy shit. Yeah. And I knew that we were going to be good friends. And right after that, you said, do you want to hear my story? And you go, I can't share it with you now, but I wrote this sort of autobiography thing, and you sent me this 8,000 word or 10,000 word document.
On the Lyme disease experience.
Yes.
And you read it.
Yeah.
And you came back the next day, I read that. I was very warmed to the fact that you actually read it, took the time to read it. I wrote that thing 3 years ago, and a lot of people don't have the time. They're just inundated with social media so much so that they kind of pick and choose what they want to listen to. So I sent it to good friends of mine who just don't have the time.
They don't make the time.
They don't make the time. So you made the time, and I'm like, okay, you're my friend now.
Has your wife read it?
No.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost didn't want to ask you that because it seems painful, but that's kind of fucked up. After I read it, I was like, holy crap, there's so much good information, and it shows everything that you've gone through, or at least in a small, concise microcosm of it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the things definitely that I want to talk to you about today is Lyme, and when you got it, sort of from the angle of what has worked for you, and the things that have made you feel better or get to a better place, right?
Yep.
So one of the things we talked about in our opening episode was alternative medicine, things that try to think natural path doctors, would recommend, but the mainstream medical system
Big
might
pharma.
not. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I don't know.
The evil empire.
Start there maybe, and then.
Or not.
Kind of see where we
can
go.
come back around. You know, you got anything else you want? How about Weston? What do you want to say?
Oh, I'm here for the ride. Trust me. There's going to be a lot of things we talk about, but I am kind of curious about this whole thing because Scotty's told me a little bit about the whole thing, and I was really
Meaning
curious.
Lyme disease?
Well, Lyme disease in general, because I've actually never really talked to somebody that had it before, but
Right.
I'm also kind of curious about what you did to kind of help combat it because it's an incurable disease from what I've understood. There's not really anything you can do about it, correct?
Well, that's a big gray area right there, I can tell you. So, like, if you got bit by a tick today and you had a good doctor that was already your friend, you could call him on the phone and say, hey, I get bit by a tick, and you give me some doxycycline for 3-4 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
It should kill it immediately. Because it's a bacteria, which is
Oh,
easy
so
to kill.
you can get it taken care of relatively quickly.
If you get it taken care of immediately, the odds of success for it to be completely wiped out are really good.
Okay.
There's a certain time frame, right? Like within
Yes,
the first
because-
few weeks or...
Yeah, and that's a gray area too, because I don't have an answer for you. I don't think anybody does. So I tell my friends, hey, you're always out hunting, or if you're hiking, if you're in the woods, if you're in tick areas, it's better to actually get a couple of weeks of doxycycline and keep it at the house, if you could.
Sure.
So if you get bit by a tick and it's been in your body for a minute, you want to start taking that, because the tick, the Lyme disease, it's called Borrelia burgdorferi. Mm-hmm. Burgdorferi was the doctor who found it in like 1975 in Lyme, Connecticut. He
Oh, so that's why it's called Lyme disease.
yeah, because they thought there was a whole bunch of kids that were coming down with rheumatoid arthritis, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and they thought, what in the world? So this Dr. Willie Burgdorferi actually found the spirochete bacteria. So they named it Burgdorferi. Borrelia is the bacteria, and Borrelia burgdorferi after the doctor.
His name.
Yeah. So, but again, the bacteria itself will build a biofilm around itself. Matter of fact, the guy I was just talking to on the phone, Dave Luke, he was telling me that his friends, or some research he was doing, that they'll take heavy metals, like you have metals in your body, mercury and alumina from different things, you've sprayed insecticides and chemical fertilizers that you get absorbed in your body. The bacteria will grab those and make a force field around itself called the biofilm. So now your immune system doesn't see the bacteria. And also...
So this is actually a process your body uses to kind of like create a capsule within the body to stop that from spreading to other areas.
No. How I understand it is the spirochetes themselves build a force field around themselves so they're not detected by your immune system.
I see.
So like that's why if you catch it right away and you give the doxycycline right away or some other antibiotic, it kills it because it hasn't had a chance to build this force field around itself.
Sure. But after a period of time, then it builds the force field, and then you're kind of fucked because there's no way of actually detecting the bacteria versus what's actually in your body.
Yeah, like in addition to, the spirochete is Latin for coiled hair.
Okay.
So it's the shape of a coiled hair, so it literally burrows into your cell to hide and evade from your immune system. So it can burrow into the cell, and your antibodies will go around the cell looking for foreign antigens, and antibiotics go around the cells, but as far as I understand, there's not too many antibiotics actually go into your cell.
Sure.
So that's where it hides. So you can do all kinds of
the
natural...
heebie-jeebies, just think
Right. You can do all kinds of natural things to kill the ones that are in your blood, and weaken their forces. And like you got 95% just as a number, and you're like, okay, I'm good. But that other 5%, the remnant has been hiding.
Sure.
And then they'll come back out and replicate like the Borg.
Sure.
And they're coming to get you.
So everything that I've heard, because I don't know too many, you're the only person I know personally that has Lyme disease.
Yeah.
But the few people that are like in popular culture or whatever, so like Stephen Coulter is the big one that he went on Joe Rogan's podcast. He's the dude that does a lot of research on flow. But everything that I've read or heard about people with Lyme disease, everyone deals with it or like finds a way to cope in a different way. Right, so everyone finds like a different method. So like Stephen,
because it affects you differently too. Like I think if all three of us here were infected at the same time, it would be affecting you differently than me. A lot of the things would be similar. The joints and the fibromyalgia and the fatigue, chronic inflammation. But you have a different. Your elements are you've got maybe too much mercury in your body and not enough magnesium, and you don't get any sleep, and it's a
drinks too much. I have too much muscle. I look too good.
Right? The chicks are running you down. So
we all have different problems.
Yeah. No, that's kind of the way I see it. So in the end, it really has to be about building your immune system. from my perspective, because
Sure.
I've been working on this for 18 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
It's been a long time.
So, how did you first contract it? Like, was there telltale signs? Like, were there any kind of indications? Like, oh shit.
My opinion is 1996. I was running a taxidermy company, and I would bring in
Scotty's
deers.
talked about this. Yes.
Yeah. So Lyme disease is prevalent in deer ticks, which is a tick
Oh yeah.
on the deer. And you know, they're on the deer. It's December. It's in Massachusetts. It's freezing cold. You shoot your deer. The tick has a choice. Do I leave the warm-bodied animal and go sit on a leaf in the middle of the winter, or should I stay in this fur jacket and hope for the best? So then you bring it into my shop, and the ambient temperature is 75 degrees, and then the ticks just start coming out, right? And you don't see them because you're doing this, you're doing that.
Right.
And you find ticks on you. And I remember I was 25, I think, in 96 or some young age, and you're immortal. I was in martial arts for 12 years. I was a bodybuilder. I was in perfect shape, you know, so you get sick all the time. You just run water off the duck's back. Like, whatever, just keep trudging forward. And then it just starts to slowly wear you down. And one of my customers said, you might check for Lyme disease. And that was so unheard of that long ago. I mean, that's almost 30 years ago.
Right.
So I remember I went and got some blood work done. It was negative. But like even now, if you go to do blood work, you've got a high prevalence of it being negative.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Something
sure.
like 50 or 75% of people, they're
Or
false
more,
negatives.
probably. Yeah, I mean, and it's hard to detect. So, but anyway, I can remember I wrote a little story that you read about remembering. I think I kind of remember having a bullseye rash because it was like, look at that. It's a bullseye. What are the odds of that? Because I had trap line. I ran a trap line since I was 9 years old. I hunted and fished. I lived in the woods. So ticks and rashes and poison ivy and poison oak, you had all kinds of stuff over all the time.
Sure.
So anyway, it came back negative and nothing. But I think what ends up happening, so I was young and fit. My immune system tried to keep it at bay. Here's a good example. You see somebody with cold sore. Mm-hmm. It's a herpesvirus.
Yep.
It goes away and it comes back. Why? How come your body never gets rid of it? Because it's a virus and it's pretty tough and it stays in your body. And when you're going to get married or you're going to the prom or something, and all of a sudden, oh, there it is. How come? Because you were nervous or you were stressed and your immune system was suppressed a little bit. So then I gave the opportunity for that virus to rear its ugly head. Mm. And it's there for a few days and your immune system kind of gets back up and brings it back into the jail. Say, stay here. But then as you get older, you start acquiring more viruses, more parasites, more heavy metal toxins, more chemical exposures, less sleep. You're getting older.
Sure.
And your immune system gets spread and spread and spread and spread thinner and thinner and thinner, hence weaker and weaker and weaker. And you're more susceptible to bugs and viruses and colds.
Well, not to mention, so doing your taxidermy during that time, you're exposing yourself to more of those things. So more bacteria, more heavy metals, which I love how cavalier you are by saying, yeah, you're exposing yourself to heavy metals. Like everybody is out there doing that.
I think you are, in a sense, indirectly. Well, say you're out there, you got your weed. How many times have you watched somebody out there in Phoenix over here spraying weed killer
Good point.
in their shorts and flip-flops?
Sure.
And that wind is spraying that on your body, and your body absorbs it, and then it bioaccumulates inside your cells somewhere.
Yeah.
Your liver can get rid of it. The process of methylation, removing these things. But as you get older, it's not as effective.
Our friend, so we were telling you about Patrick. So Mike's dad, Patrick, is part of was part of the class action lawsuit against Roundup. So he has leukemia based on exactly that.
Huh.
So, yeah, you can get exposed to a ton of stuff.
Sure. So Roundup has I think it's called glyphosates.
Yep. That's
which
the
was
active ingredient.
Right, which was a patented, what was it, an antibacterial? I can't recall off the top of my head.
I'm blanking on that.
I think it is an antibacterial because when they spray the crops with Roundup, and say it's an oil base so it doesn't wash off with the rain,
right?
And then they harvest the crop, and then they say it's wheat or whatever, and then through the processes, that glyphosate is still on the wheat.
Sure.
And then you eat the bread, and then you're getting bloated stomach, and then you're getting leaky gut syndrome and different things like that. A lot of people are attributing it to, because it's an antibacterial, so it's killing the good flora in your gut.
Sure.
right? So one day, like my wife will go to Poland and she'll be like, man, this, because she's from there, and she'll be like, the wheat is different, the bread is different, and it is. It tastes, you don't get bloated, you don't feel stuffed. So
it's not as heavily processed either.
Right,
So
and then maybe genetically modified. It's complicated, right? To try to figure out what in the world is really going on.
So do you think that as far as Lyme disease and you getting to the point that you are now, so despite whatever you tell me on a day-to-day basis, like you're energetic, you run your taxidermy business, you're full-time mail carrier, like you got a lot of shit going on. So It seems like you have a lot of energy regardless of how you feel. I'm not saying that's not important, right? But like you're able to output.
Good, that's great, because I wasn't.
Right. So is it a combination of a bunch of different things? Is it the awareness that you had? So like when you're 25, you're
drinking.
Right.
You're drinking too much beer. You're staying up at 2 o'clock in the morning. You're getting up.
You're in the taxidermy shop, fucking exposing yourself to all the chemicals. So is it a slow, gradual increase of all of these different things that you started doing better that helped your immune system combat the Lyme?
True.
Or
I think so. Not to cut you off, but it's also a slow, gradual increase to where you put so much load on your body with toxins where you finally break down. Right? Let's just go through the whole board, not just parasites, but metals and different things, right? Like even, I think it's for like the bug spray, in order for them to get that neurological agent to kill the bugs, the vehicle behind it, let's just say, is aluminum. So different metals they put in the insecticide. So while you're spraying that, and you're exposing your skin to it, your hands, you're breathing it in, your body's got to expel that. When you're 20, no big deal. But you keep doing that, and now you're 60, you've accumulated a lot in your body. Just that one thing, never mind all the other things, the poor eating habits, the poor sleep habits, whatever, smoking, drinking, all that stuff as you get older starts to accumulate and wear you down. Definitely. So on the opposite side of that, I think by doing all the different things I did, which is a myriad of things, from vitamins and minerals and sleep, and you hear that so much it goes one ear and out the other. You're like, oh yeah, I hear it. No, it makes a difference. Supplements, a proper hydration. I remember being on the mail route, be 110 degrees, you're drinking gallons of water, and I'd be peeing every 15 minutes, and it would be clear with a little slight yellow tinge. You're like, I'm hydrated. Right, because when it stinks and it's bright yellow, you're like, man, you're dehydrated.
Or dirt brown. What's water?
Yeah, you're dehydrated. So I tried all these different things, and then one day, YouTube has been a great help actually. Somebody was touting Dr. Cowden's protocol for Lyme disease, and it was like, talk to my naturopath, Dr. Brian Archibald, and he's like, yeah, I got some here. So $350 a month. With all these natural botanicals, tinctures, and you put 4 drops of this and 6 drops of that and 4 different bottles of water a day.
What is a botanical?
Like, they'll go down to Peru and get stevia, a natural plant extract, and make a tincture, like with alcohol and that.
This is like homeopathy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say so for sure.
So
I don't know though, right?
You use like a concentrated amount of a single ingredient, and then you distill that in alcohol or something.
Yeah, for preservative. Then you buy that, and then you put those drops into some water.
Sure.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, if you ever read my story from that Lyme disease story I wrote, I have pictures of like the protocol itself, and you got all these different, I can't remember off the top of my head, but all these different medicines in there.
So did you think that was helpful?
That's what changed me. That Cowden protocol is what gave me the turnaround. But again, back to the dehydration, Dr. Cowden said, if you don't drink 3 liters of water a day at least, this is not going to work. You have to drink 3 liters because you got to get the water. So you want those chemicals, the good stuff, the meds, to be absorbed into the water and then brought into your cell. And then as they work and kill off these organisms, you want the water to remove those dead organisms through your cell, right? So you got to have proper hydration. The way to do that was to drink 3 to 4 ounces of water every 10 to 15 minutes throughout the day till your 3 liters were done.
Sure.
And when I started doing that, then I could go the whole day on the post office route without peeing once. And for the last 15 years before that, I'd be peeing 20 times and thinking I was hydrated. Right. But actually I wasn't, because one of the blood work that my naturopath and I had done was called ADH, which is antidiuretic hormone. and I don't have any. So your body has this hormone and says, okay, don't pee, got to hydrate. So I don't have that hormone, which is a whole nother story because of the Lyme disease and biotoxins and all this other things. So I would drink water and it would go right through me. So it wasn't absorbing into my body.
Sure.
I would drink it, it'd go right through because the mechanisms to hold the water weren't being used. ADH hormone. So once I started drinking a little bit at a time, it was just enough to absorb. And that really, really, really worked. So
yeah, that's great advice for anybody that's like actually trying to hydrate.
Even if you're healthy.
You think like, oh, I'm gonna go work in the sun all day. I'm gonna drink half a gallon at a time, and then you don't drink for the next 2 hours. You're like, God damn, I'm thirsty, and you drink another half a gallon. But the little bit over time is a big.
I think so.
Help.
It worked for me.
And electrolytes, right? So salt,
True.
potassium.
That's another big. I remember buying a book once called "Salt Your Way to Health."
Yeah.
Because you live in the desert. You lick your skin. What does it taste like? Salt. Mm-hmm. So we're sweating profusely out here, and you just burn through that salt quick. 2 times through all the blood work I've done through my doctor, it's like every 6 months I go see him, and we run a gamut of all these different possibilities. And twice in the past, he's like, you're low on sodium. And I'm like, I have a salt shaker at the post office. I have a salt shaker in the truck and salt at the house. Yep. And I liberally salt my food.
Yep. Well, you might be a super salt sweater. Have you ever heard about this?
No, tell me more.
So when you sweat, I've learned a lot about electrolytes since my injury because that was one of the main theories is like what caused me to lose consciousness in the first place was lack of electrolytes.
Right.
But apparently certain people, so you'll know if you sweat, you look at your armpits, if there's like a white ring, there's a white ring around your neck or anyway, if that's a good way to tell.
I am not a super sweater then.
Okay. Well, and maybe not. Or maybe just the white ring doesn't show up. But certain people sweat out more electrolytes than others. So everybody's body's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's like we talked about earlier. Like all 3 of us had Lyme, we'd all be a little bit different.
Exactly.
As far as that, I know that I've had times where I've sweated that much because I worked in a lot of factories and stuff like that. Like I've done a lot of heavy labor in my life, and there'd be times where I'd sweat, and then when it would dry, you could see that like crystalline white line.
That's true.
And it's like, oh man, yeah, that is definitely some salty sweat. I know for a fact. So it's not like that all the time, but I know that there's been times where I do that, and it's like crystalline. It's like, oh man, I could almost put this on my pork chop, man.
Well, you're the type of person, right? So that's what I was going to say with Mike, with his blood tests or whatever. That hey, you're low in sodium. You're the type of person that really has to watch out for that. So especially if you're going to go work out in the heat, like you should be supplementing with salt in the morning because otherwise your body doesn't have any way to hold on to the water. Right, so
the salt retains
water. You can drink as much water as you want. It's just you're going to piss it out. So
it's complicated, right? So it's not only ADH hormone, salt intake, and other factors as well.
Absolutely. So let me put you on the hot seat.
Go ahead.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
So I did some research on Dr. Cowden.
Okay.
So check this out, and this is where this is what we talked about in our first episode, which I think you listened to.
I did.
I'm of the opinion that certain naturopath or non-traditional medicines, like they do work, right? And they work for different people at different times, but not necessarily everyone all the time, which is why they're not traditional medicine, we'll say, or at least traditional Western medicine. So Dr. Cowden, I'm not going to say what year because I can't remember off the top of my head, but did you know he was suspended in 3 years suspended from practicing medicine in Texas for 3 years?
No, I didn't.
And fined like $2,500. There's a whole long list of legal stuff against him.
Okay, so I have an answer for that right off the bat.
Go for it, yeah.
So Big Pharma, right? In my mind, like Weston said, the evil empire, they're the adversary. So from my perspective, which is kind of tainted after time, you get the pharmacies who are trying to run the world, baby, and they want everybody to take a vaccine. You're going to get this shot, you're going to do it, you're going to do that, you're going to take our medicine, and we're going to bastardize the chiropractors and the naturopaths because those are the competition, and we're going to just try to get rid of them all together so we have complete control. There's a movie called Under Our Skin about Lyme disease. So we go back to earlier when we were talking about you get so many false negatives for when you do a Lyme test, whether it's a PCR test or a ELISA test, or there's lots of different things. There's always false negatives. So prevalent that a lot of the doctors are like, look, we're going to go by symptomology. You've got this, you got this, you got this, you got this. That's very common with Lyme. We're going to treat Lyme, which is illegal in some of these states. So these doctors are getting fired, brought up before the medical board. So these guys who are trying to think outside the box to help their patients because allopathic Western medicine has done nothing for them but tell them that they're hypochondriacs.
Sure.
Then they go to this doctor, and the doctor's like, well, we got all these negative tests, but it's sure symptomology, you sure seem like you got it. Let's try this. We're going to give you these antibiotics. And then the medical board reviews them, somehow a whistleblower or whatever, and like, okay, you're out. We're going to take your license because you're not supposed to do that. So I look at that like, I don't know the truth, but that helped me. And after 1996 to like 5 years ago of suffering, he's got my vote, Dr. Cowden, for being a fighter, a warrior, someone going against the grain. So I'm just going to give him that right off the bat. I could be wrong. He could, you know, maybe he deserved it. I don't know. But just from my worldview currently, that there's powers that be that want to silence people like that.
Yeah.
You know?
I completely understand where you're coming from. So let me make an analogy.
Okay.
Because this is something else that I want to ask you about. In your Lyme story, one of the things that I guess that resonated with me the most was you were talking about the difference, or how to tell the difference between when you should push yourself versus when you should rest.
Amen to that.
Right? Because if you've ever had a serious illness, you'll know what's the line, and you don't know is like the real answer. Everybody kind of has to figure out for themselves.
And that line varies sometimes too, right?
Absolutely.
From month to month, yeah.
There's a word, interoception.
Never heard of it.
Okay, so interoception is your ability to detect and analyze what is going on in your own body. So both physically and emotionally. So the more specific or the more aware you can be of your own emotions, of how your heart is reacting, how your organs are reacting, how you can define that, what signals your body is giving you, the more accurately you can make that decision, right? Is today a day that you can push, or is today a day that you need to rest? Correct. So very similar to that, the question that I'm trying to get to, or the analogy that I want to make, is how do you tell the difference between Dr. Cowden, someone that has a protocol that's actually going to work for you and help you with your Lyme disease, and Dr. X, whoever, who's just selling you something to take your money and it's not going to help at all, or might actually fuck you up?
So you try it, right? So you would listen to me because we're friends. We've talked a lot, and you go, Mike recommends it. It works for him. He's not selling me anything. I could try it and to see if it worked. And I think you'd have to give it a shot for some longevity, not just a week or two.
Sure.
You know, to see if it actually does work for you.
So word of mouth, probably huge.
Networking with people, like you talk to a lot of people, and then you got to sort through BS, pretense, different things, and try everything. Like in my story, in my experience, I've tried so many different things all at the same time because just desperate to be healed, to feel alive again, to have energy. You're not going to do one thing and let's see, I'll just do one thing for a month and see. No, you're like, I don't want, I'm going to do 6 things right now because I read this, I heard that, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. So, and again, they work synergistically sometimes as well.
Yep.
So it's like if you take just vitamin C, that works great. But if you take vitamin C and vitamin E, they work together in combination. And vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E. That's when I was going back to the supplements, right? It's not a joke. And if you're doing supplements and you're buying minerals and vitamins, make sure it's got a GMP, a good manufacturing practice label, or a USP, United States Pharmacopoeia Code. So they're third-party tested because the FDA doesn't regulate vitamins and minerals. Yeah. So you got a lot of shysters out there that are just giving you a shitty product. But get that GMP mark, spend a little extra money, and get in there and start absorbing these things. Start taking as much as you can.
So after about 25 years, part of the problem that you're pointing out is like you have all these different options. You have hundreds, if not thousands of different options that might help you. You're going by word of mouth and not by like peer-reviewed research. So you have to not only be your own advocate, do your own research, but you also have to try so many things to find what's going to work. And you have to figure out what combination of those things together is going to work for you long term.
Right, which kind of sounds stressful, and you have to figure this out, so you just jump right in and just start. Because number one, it's going to be healthy for you, right? So you're like, I'm going to take a vitamin B complex. And, well, you're peeing out a lot of that, because so what? You peed out 5 cents worth of vitamin B. I want my body to have enough to absorb and whatever it does, and especially water-based.
Sure.
So you have water-based vitamins like vitamin C, but oil-based, E, A, D, K. Am I missing one? E, A, E, D, K. Those are oil-based. So you could take too much of an oil-based vitamin.
Sure.
So you want to back off a little bit. But by pushing this into your body, proper hydration and extra minerals and extra vitamins and proper sleep and less stress, it sounds so cliche, but that's a real big deal. But again, we did this test. I did a 23andMe test, and came back that I was missing 2 genetic markers from methylation. So methylation is the process where your body removes toxins. Like if you have bacteria and viruses, they excrete waste, pee, poop, and they're dead. They get killed by the immune system. Well, your immune system will come in and kill that bacteria or virus or whatever, and your methylation system are like janitors that sweep it out and then excrete it through your pee and poop. So I wasn't methylating because genetically, so it was a problem for me. So that also was part of the puzzle, where those biotoxins accumulate. And they're so small, yeah, you're not going to be bothered when you're 20, but when you're 45, you've got a lot more.
Sure. That
combined with the stress of a new house and the economy and just life, that starts to really wear you out. So they have this product called methylate folate. And so you've heard of folic acid, but folate is one of the pills you could take to actually remove, to help your body methylate, to remove these dead particles.
Did you paint a C5 airplane?
No, but I painted the hangar. So
okay.
I got out of high school. My first job was a painter. $5 an hour, 1985.
Oh my God.
And then that was with Marty's Dinette. And in 1986, John Saka, Polak, like me, he hired me, and I was making, I think, $6 an hour. My buddy was a union carpenter. We went to high school together. And he was making like $18 an hour.
That's a lot of money back then.
Yeah, and he'd have the winter off, and his unemployment check in Massachusetts was bigger than my 40-hour-a-week work check. And I go, who's the dummy?
Right.
So I said, I'm going to join the union. So I got in, fortunately, in the painters union. And my first job was at Westover Air Force Base, and they had built a C-5A hangar. They're building it. Mm-hmm. So when they would throw up the steel, it'd be factory primed with paint, but where the bolts would connect the steel together, they had to be bare. They had no paint. So once those people would bolt it, I'd be up there in the steel. I'd come behind them and I would paint it. But you can't get every one. It's going to rain. It's Massachusetts. So you'd be up there with a die grinder and getting all the rust off, then come in and paint it. And that was lead paint. I remember, holy mackerel, that was funny. I had forgot the story, but, it was the lead paint lasts forever. And I was like, shh, this is lead paint. It's the government.
Sure. So
But
they were keeping it under wraps is what you're saying.
Yeah. And again, I'm not 100% true, but that's the word that was on the street at the time.
That had to be a massive hangar. So I looked
It
up.
was. Oh,
I
you
looked
did?
up the C5 airplane.
Uh-huh.
Because I thought what you had said was that it was the plane, but the hangar makes sense.
The hangar, yeah.
But they're like 63 feet tall, fucking 222 foot wingspan.
They're massive.
300 and something thousand pounds empty. Like, they're huge planes.
No,
that's a lot of bolts.
You're not kidding, buddy.
That's just for the plane. The hangar is going to be even bigger.
But I went from making $6 an hour to making, I forgot, really, like 16 overnight. And it was great. It was right down the street. It was 12-hour days, 7 days a week.
Holy
crap.
There
was no rest. Yeah. So that's how. So once they got the skin on, that's what they called it. So you had the roof and you got the sides. We had all these man lifts on the inside because we're up there, we're painting, and all that carbon monoxide is just in that hangar. And you you're breathing that in, and you're getting that lead paint on you, and you're working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, but you're only 20. So you're like, no big deal.
You had a lot of exposure, but you felt invincible
because you're young, and you kind of were. Right? You kind of are invincible in a sense.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. When you're younger, you don't really think about your repercussions when you get older.
No, absolutely not. That's why you drink and drive. And you're dumb. Because you get killed. So.
You ain't lying.
Well, some of it's just the excitement for me. Like, drive with one eye open. Can
I make it? Which telephone pole is real? I can remember I was in a man lift, and it was like a Shaughnessy. It was a 100-footer. So you'd boom out, you'd telescope out, and you could boom up to, I think, 90 feet or 100 feet. I can't recall. And the hangar itself was like at 100 feet. And the beam, the I-beam, just think of a capital letter I inverted sideways.
Okay, sure.
So I remember I'm going up to get guys for lunch, and I'm into my man lift, and I go right up to the top, and you're trying to finesse it right equal with the edge of the beam. You bring that man lift, the cage, right to the edge of the beam, and you're touching the beam, and you hand signal to the guys, come on, get in, we're going to go for lunch. And then when 4 guys get in, or however much it was, that extra weight, put a little, pinched the basket underneath the eye part of the beam.
Okay.
So now I'm wedged, in a sense, in the beam. And I'm boomed out all the way, telescoped out all the way, so there's really not a lot of play. So I'm sitting there, and you're 100 feet in the air.
Right.
Right? And I remember finessing the controls. And this guy, I forgot his name. He was an ex-Vietnam vet. And he goes, get out of the way, kid. And he comes and he just manhandles the control, and it pops out of the beam. And that force, the leverage, and I can remember looking down, and the tires are going far, like, oh, she's gonna go! And I jumped out, I grabbed the beam. Now I got my safety harness strapped onto my waist, and I'm tied into the basket, but I jump out of the basket, and I'm holding onto the beam for life, but if that thing would have went over, my arms would still be there today. Right. My body would be on the ground, but my arms would have. Oh, there's another time we were, it was coming up, so the 100-foot mark was the height, and at 90 feet was the bottom of the I-beams, and they were crisscrossed for like a structure support. Yep. So you'd be like in your basket, and you're weaving your way in all the little cross beams, and you're painting. You're like, okay, come down for lunch. And I remember coming down, and the control box had a cover on it, kind of like a grill. You could close it and open, just like a grill, same size as your outside grill for cooking, chicken and stuff. Sure. And I'm coming down, and I wasn't paying attention. I hit an I-beam with that cover closed on my arm so hard it broke the band on my watch, snapped the watch. And now I'm trapped. Sure. Now I can't manipulate the controls because the box is closed and I'm pinched. Ooh. But you could work the controls from the bottom of the machine as well. Right. And some guy had to come down. And, yeah. And then the last experience, by months and months of 7 days a week, 12 hours, you're exhausted. People, your nerves are on edge. The foreman was a crack addict or what I forgot what kind of drugs they were doing, but he was a pain in the ass. Jim was his name. And so when I got there at 7 in the morning, the crews would go 24 hours. So you'd work 12 hours one crew, the next crew would come in another 12 hours. So I come in and the guy goes, Bieda, don't get on that the man lift, the hydraulics are faulty. So I go to Jim, hey, I heard. And he goes, get in there, Bieda. And I'm like 18 years old, and I'm like, intimidated, and yes, okay. Sure. And I get up there, and I'm going up, and sure as shit, I don't know, about 60 foot, the hydraulics in the basket let go, and tipped me over and dumped me out of the basket, and I'm holding on to the basket with my hands, and I could have been there for 3 years, because I was like death grip, and I'm like, my buddy John Oliveira, God rest his soul, he died like 4 months ago. We were close friends. I just got him a job. They all see me hanging there, so I can't manipulate the basket because I'm hanging outside. Right. And he comes running over. No, wait, he was in his Shaughnessy and it's trying to boom up to me, but he couldn't, so he's going left, he's going right. And meanwhile, I'm hanging there, and other guys are down at the bottom trying to bring the boom in and telescope me in. And those are my hair-raising stories for working on that C5A hangar.
It's amazing that you're still alive.
The lead poisoning. Right. Oh, here's a good one. So I was hunting ducks in Plymouth Harbor, Massachusetts, in January, in the ocean. Sure. Freezing cold, ice everywhere. I'm in a 6'9" boat, called a layout boat. So it's about 2 feet high, 6'9" long. It's like a little coffin. And the idea is you lay down in there so you have a low profile so the ducks don't see this big ominous boat. Yep. And they come whizzing by and you sit up and you shoot. So I'm going in, the tide was going out or coming in. The wind was contrary to the tide. It was making this real rough chop. And I'm in this little, it probably was only 12 inches tall. Sure. A very small boat. I got a little 3-horse motor on the back. And I'm like, I better go in. Getting dangerous. And you're 20, no life jacket, waders up to your neck, all this clothing on so you don't freeze to death. And I'm going in, I'm heading for the shore, and I have a hood on, right? Got all your beanies on your hood, and you're looking like this, right? You got blinders on, you can always see forward.
Right.
And the good Lord said to me, you better look to your right. At least that's the way I like to interpret it. So I look to my right, and there's a lobster boat bearing down on me.
Holy shit.
Right there. I mean, literally right there. And it's about to run me over. So I whipped the handle on the board, the motor. Being that the boat was so light, the whole front end just came right around, did a complete 360. In that time, which was just a mere fraction of a second, I turned around and gave the guy the bird, fuck you! And he was already past me. That's how close it was. He was right there. And now, here comes this giant wake. Yeah. About to swamp me. I'm like, holy mackerel! So I got the motor bored out, and I'm heading back to the middle where all that chop was, where I had just left. And I'm only gaining on this giant wake by mere inches. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to turn around before I hit that wave, that chop in the middle. I'm gonna have to hit that wave. And my dad was in the Coast Guard, and you always hit a wave at a 45-degree angle. And I remember that, and I whipped the boat around, like, now it was just a moment of like, take a deep breath, and here we go. And I remember hitting that wave at the 45, they're coming way up, just like in that movie, this Killer Storm movie. What movie? Perfect Storm. You see that? You're going up, and you're coming down, and you're going to slice into the water, which would drown you, right? Which would swamp you. Yeah. But because I hit the 45, it rode it off to the side. And I made it like, oh my God, I'm so lucky.
Isn't it amazing with like super high stress moment like that?
Yeah.
You can picture, I'm sure, in your mind, your dad's suggestion or your dad's advice, hit the wave at 45 degrees. So when you're in like that tense freaking moment where it's like life or death right now, that moment, you hear, I don't know if you heard the advice, did you see the advice?
I don't recall, but I do have one story where everything went slow motion.
Okay.
I'm delivering mail. I'm in Wildflower Ranch. Brand new. I think I might have still been I was a substitute carrier. Got to get the mail delivered. I'm at the last NBU for the day, and there's a parcel that won't fit in the parcel locker. I look at the address, and the house is right there. I'm like, oh, great. So I'm running up the driveway, walking briskly up the driveway, and the garage door was open by about a foot. And I'm not looking. I'm looking at the package, and I go, and I look up, and here comes this chow running at me as fast as he can. I'm like, fight or flight, right? So I throw my arms up wide like that, and he jumped in the air, and he bit onto my forearm, and I punched him in the face with my right, and he went down, and he came back around for a bite, and I took my foot. He came back around, right, and I went to give him a kick like that, and he ducked the kick like a martial artist. He was watching Bruce Lee movies for sure. He ducked the kick, and then it went slow motion. His fangs were out, his jaws were up, that black tongue, and he was coming right at me. Nothing but teeth and fangs. And I'm like, that's when it was slow motion. What am I going to do now? I just leaned right into it, and I punched him right in the mouth. Oh, he went down, and the homeowner come running out at the same time, and it was, he hit a vein in my forearm, so the blood was going, squirting out. The homeowner's freaking out. She grabbed the dog.
Holy shit.
I'm like, but that was a slow motion time when everything just stopped, and I could see that jaw fangs and that black tongue on a chow, and he was coming at me. And I remember thinking, what are you going to do? Punch him right in the face. Punch him in the teeth.
My dad has a similar story to that because my dad was he was a police officer in a small town, and sometimes you have to go to places, houses, and see what's going on for a call or whatever. There was one story, however, where he's walking up on this house. He was just getting onto the property. The people opened up the door, and I believe it was either a Rottweiler or a Doberman. One of the two. One of the scarier dogs that you can see just start charging at you. He had that moment of realization of, oh shit, I have this dog coming at me. Doesn't look friendly. I gotta figure out how to deal with it. As quick as a flash, he said he took out his billy club, and right when it was lunged for him, he just whacked it like as hard as he could in the head. Yeah. Actually killed it.
Wow!
Yeah. They sued the city.
Wow!
But, I mean, this was back in the day, so like, police officers did no wrong. Like, when we were on the mountain the other day, my dad was telling you, like, everyone had a high opinion of cops, like, could do no wrong, but, like, certain incidences would still happen. If you do that now, you'd probably almost lose your job, probably. Sure. But Yeah, he had that moment of realization too. He's like, the dog's life or me getting fucked up. Nah. Boom!
Yeah.
But I always remember that too because, like, I've had a lot of incidences where dogs would come up at me and it'd be like, okay, friendly dog, nasty dog.
Right.
Looks friendly.
Were you profiling?
Yeah, no, 100% profiling. Chihuahua coming at me? Old shoes. I don't care. But yeah, if I saw a big dog like that coming at me, I'd probably club him too. Like, and I thought, like, you know, in certain situations, like you did, like doing like making
Looking
something big because that's a popular tactic for dealing with a lot of game animals like bears, cougars, which I'm sure you're familiar with. You said you were an outdoorsman.
Oh, for sure.
So
and even
not
people,
bad.
right?
Oh yeah, people too.
Even
sure.
people.
Like I flash my belly, they go, "Oh my god!" and
they start running.
Hell yeah, I do too. That's why I don't look at myself in the mirror in the mornings.
So one thing that I'm curious about, Mike, this is kind of a branch off topic, but we were talking about the Wendigo story.
Yeah.
So this is the earliest mention of a Wendigo as far as like chronologically, so earlier in
for you
time.
in your world.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
me and
I've
mine too.
ever heard of. So the first time that I was introduced to Wendigo was in a video game called Until Dawn, and it's a choice-based game, so kind of like story-based, but you have a bunch of different characters.
Or pick your own adventure book, kind of. Like,
similar to
go
that.
to page 153. All right, and you read a section, and then it's like, make a choice. If you make this choice, go to page 23. If you make this choice, go to page 201. It's kind of like that, just in a video game format.
And way more complex. So there's like, we'll say there's like 12 different characters, and you can make decisions with each of those characters, and depending on the decisions you make, the game changes later on.
That sounds real fun.
Yeah, and characters can die and stuff too, so like their timeline ends as far as the story's concerned. Like, it's a very fascinating game for all intents and purposes. Like, anything could happen as far as, you know, like, you have no idea. It's a great game, but yeah, the Wendigo was the main antagonist of the story.
So that was the first time that I was introduced to it, and Weston has, like, of anyone that I know, by far the most knowledge when it comes to cryptids. So cryptids
Explain what a cryptid is,
Yeah, Weston, because...
A cryptid, I guess, is... I don't know what the actual scientific definition is for a cryptid, but whenever I hear the word cryptid, my mind comes to an undocumented creature of unknown origin that has yet to be fully discovered or explored. So a lot of things that fall into that category are going to be Bigfoot, Chupacabra, some of the ones that we probably know more about here. But then like the Wendigo being another one, or Skinwalkers, kind of. That's kind of a weird stretch because that goes into a huge cultural reference for Native Americans. Yeah, because some would argue in certain cases that Skinwalkers and Wendigos could be the same. Other places are going to call them their own kind of influences and territories. But Nessie of Loch Ness could be considered a cryptid, an older dinosaur. Who knows? There's a bunch of different ones that you could go off of. And there's a bunch of ones in like Brazil or Africa, like the Maquila lamambe, which is arguably just a dinosaur, if it exists. Or maybe it is a cryptid. It's hard to say. It's supposed to be like a really big Bronchiosaurus, but with a meaner attitude. The giant flying bat of Brazil, which is supposed to be the size of like a pterodactyl. And if you don't know, pterodactyls back in the day were massive son of bitches. So a cryptid would probably fall into that kind of realm of category as far as just not having any documentation. There's no scientific evidence really for them.
Right. Just eyewitness reports.
Eyewitness reports, occasional tracks. Some people have hair and stuff like that. And the really interesting part about cryptids like that is sometimes you'll have these samples that are undocumented and they don't know the full origin. But that's still not enough because you would really have to have probably video proof. You would have to have a sample of a live specimen, so blood, skin, what have you.
We can do DNA testing.
Exactly. Those are the ones that they namely go for. So that's why Forrest Galante, I don't know if you've heard of him.
Nope.
He's a guy that goes after animals that are extinct. He's doing a huge run for the thylacine right now, or the Tasmanian tiger. It went extinct back in the 60s, allegedly. The last one was named George or something like that.
I could be wrong.
Exactly. It died of exposure to the elements. Yeah. But it's supposed to be in New Zealand, Australia, and New Guinea. He's doing a huge undertaking to see if he can find it now. But as far as other cases, he's found a soft-shell turtle that was believed to go extinct in Asia.
Oh, wow.
He actually caught one and was able to get recordings of it, and he got samples because it's like we need to make sure that they get back onto the endangered species list.
Yeah,
he's done that with a couple of different animals.
Really
now.
cool.
He found the last mating pair of
the Galapagos tortoise.
Galapagos tortoise.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. There was only one mating pair of the Galapagos tortoise left?
It was said that they were extinct, and he actually found a pair of mateable ones. Yes.
There's a bunch of different
island chains where they were inhabited, right?
What do you call breeds of turtle? I don't know if that's the right
term.
I'm
with you. I got
sure,
you.
but there's a bunch of different. But that breeding pair was the last known breeding pair
of the Galapagos turtle.
Of that
tortoise,
that breed of the tortoise.
And there is a video of him actually finding it on the Galapagos, and he runs a show called Extinct or Alive, and that's where he does a lot of it. And when you watch a lot of these shows, one of the things that always makes me mad is like, oh, what's that? And you see bushes wrestling,
blurry,
and it turns out it's just a native person in their habitat, and they're like, oh, damn it. But when you're watching his show, it's like, oh shit, it could actually be something because he actually gets results. So it's a really fascinating show if you ever get interested about that kind of stuff.
I do. Like I have a hypothesis like with Bigfoot.
I would love to hear it.
All right. So let's say you're an alien culture and you visit the Earth. And for whatever reason you want to come down on the planet, maybe you're looking for botanicals for health, you want to explore, you're just like a nature guy, but you don't want to be discovered, right? By prying eyes. Maybe there's this galactic precedence where, hey, you can't, we don't want them to know we're here.
Sure.
So, but if you've got the technology to go through wormholes and to come in a spaceship and to transport down to the Earth, how do you know you don't have the technology for like a, what would I call it? Like an artificial shield or what would you call
it? Like a bodysuit of some sort.
Right, or an image, right?
Okay.
So, what if you're a gray and you're small and you're only 3 foot tall, but you want to roam the forest? But there's bears out there, mountain lions. But if you can create an image of a giant, hairy, 7 foot tall, 8 foot tall, 500-pound muscle person, what's going to attack that? And being that there's already the folklore in America, so if you're some guy out there on your horse or you got a camera, there's a Sasquatch, then it takes away from, there was an alien. I don't know. Just a thought.
Sure.
Just a thought. Why not? I mean...
No, absolutely.
That's the prime directive from Star Trek, by the way.
They're so full of crap. I'm a Trekkie. They break that prime directive when it suits their needs all the time. I mean, you guys are giant hypocrites.
Rules
and I'm a
Trekkie, broken,
man.
all right?
I love Star Trek, but man, they're hypocrites.
Can I ask you,
No.
the reason that I brought... Oh, well, fine.
Oh,
the reason that I bring up the Wendigo story.
Yeah.
So you had a DVD, and it turns out that the interview wasn't on it, unfortunately.
Right.
But I would love to hear the story behind... What was your friend's name?
John Oliveira.
John Oliveira.
God rest his soul. He just kicked the bucket a few months ago. So, unfortunately, I don't remember much. But what I'm telling you is true. Not that everything else I had to say hasn't been true, but we go on a bear hunt. So my friend Lonnie Damaris, Dave Fredette, me, Mike Bieda, Johnny Oliveira, a guy named Pete, older guy, he was a drywaller, because we were all in the construction field, painting, carpenter, electric stuff. So we get together, we're young kids, it's 1991, we're going on a trip to Maine. We get in the car and we drive all the way up to Maine. To Canada. So the video, which I just watched the last, when we got off the main road, is a 100-mile long dirt road to get to the camp.
Holy crap.
It was way out there. And you paid for a service, and they had a homes where you could sleep, and they would cook for you, and then the guides would go out and they would hang bait in trees. So it was so thick. It was like Vietnam jungle bush. There's plants from 0 to 6 inches to 10 inches to 12 inches to 16 feet to 30 feet, just pure green. So how are you going to find a bear in that? So what they would do, they would take a chainsaw and they would cut out a hallway, and at the end of the hallway would be like a larger tree, and they would hang some molasses with some beef or whatever, donuts, a 55-gallon drum of pork fat, and then they'd set up a tree stand, and you'd sit in your tree stand and you'd wait. So it was really no challenge, but it was still fun. You're a kid, you want to get a bear, So we were on this bear hunting trip, and the flies and mosquitoes, they call them no-see-ums. So you have this, they were you would have thousands of biting insects on you at once, so bad that you'd have your long pants that go over your boots, and you would duct tape the pants to the boot. You put on rubber gloves, neoprene gloves, and you duct tape the sleeve of your arm to your hand, and then your face, you'd have this, it was a shield of like screen. So you had a little hat.
So almost like a beekeeper costume.
Exactly. Well put. Just camouflage.
Yeah.
Unless you're in the snow, then it would fit perfectly. Those guys in the white. But and those seams were like these little small insects that would get through the screen, and you felt like there was a drop of acid on your skin. And you're in the bare tree stand, and you don't want to move. You really want to scratch your face because it's burning you. I get you. Anyway.
They're called no-see-ums?
No-see-ums.
I gotta look it up.
Okay. And don't forget, that was in Canada, and that's what they call
Are
them.
they any relation to chiggers, by chance?
No. I have no idea.
Okay.
But they flew, and I don't think chiggers fly. But those
I'm not too sure. I've heard of chiggers in other part of the states before. I've never actually experienced them either, but a lot of people I've talked to in camping and hunting stories and stuff, they would always mention them and be like, you can't say that word. And I'm like, not that, it's a bug. It's like, oh. And then they would explain to me that they would like burrow into your skin and whatnot and just be a real menace. And I thought, well, maybe it's more Michigan and areas that I'm thinking of. Not
I've heard
like
people here. No, I've heard people here in Arizona. Hunters come to me and say,
I think Michigan too, though, because a lot of my family, so I have family from Michigan on both sides, but they've always talked about chiggers up there.
I've never been exposed to them either.
Right.
God forbid. They sound...
Land shark.
They sound bad.
So, we come back to camp one evening, and Huey was the owner, and he was a nice guy. And my buddy John Oliveira, he says, hey, Hugh, he goes, I heard this strange noise out there. It sounded like an elk bugle. And I forgot more of the story, but I can remember John saying this, and we're hunters, like, there's no elk up here, it's too thick. You got moose, you don't have elk. And Hugh goes, oh, it's a Wendigo. Now, this is 1991. You know, we had never heard of a Wendigo. Like, what kind of fantastic story are you telling?
Really, up in that area, there wasn't really too much stories or anything like that?
From my experience as a person, I had never heard of
a Wendigo. Just when you first got introduced, okay.
Correct. And the guys I was with, the whole crew, we had never heard of a Wendigo.
Okay.
So, Hugh's telling this story of what this creature is, with an elk bugle. You know what an elk bugle sounds like?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And there might have been more to it, Weston. I can't remember. And I had watched it. So we had made a video of this episode of us hunting for a week. And I had transferred it to a DVD, and I had sent them out to my friends. And the one DVD that I had possessed, it got ruined. But when I had watched it like 4 years ago to make the transfer, I could remember... I thought I remember John telling the story.
Sure.
You know, but unfortunately, it wasn't. So I had called my friend Lonnie Damaris. I'm like, hey, man, you get me that DVD back, and I'm going to share it with Weston, because in my mind, because this was 30-something years ago, 35 years ago, maybe?
Sure.
Right.
He was on the video telling the story, but he wasn't. And I was so disappointed, because I so wanted to share that with you.
It was something else, right? Like some bear story? Or...
Yeah, so like exactly. So when John was at his bait on one night, on another night, or maybe the same night, the bear had winded him, and it was circling around the tree stand, clicking his jaws.
Okay.
Click, which is like a territorial warning thing, like, hey, watch out, I'm going to get you, or don't come after me, type of thing. So I had combined the two stories in my mind, you know, that he was doing an elk bugle with the clicking, because the video, he did have on the video where John was showing his hand like this, going, and then I just combined the two together. So, believe me, no one's more sad about that than me.
So, out of curiosity, when you first got exposed to the story of the Wendigo, what was it that was told to you, like what they were and whatnot? Just out of curiosity.
Don't remember.
That's fair.
I don't want to make up anything. I don't remember, which is so sad.
Well, how about this? In your mind now, what is a Wendigo? Like, sitting there right now, like, if someone asked you what that is, what would you describe?
A supernatural creature, right? Or, what if it's not supernatural? What if it's a living, breathing, organic mammal that is out there? So, you know, all these Native American legends, they all spout from something, right? They're all around the globe, so there's got to be some truth to the story. So I don't think it's made up. I have no idea what it could be, what it is. But here's one thing that's kind of really neat. I think I remember telling this to Scott. So, somewhere along the line of that same hunting trip, if it's true that I think some of the Wendigos, do they eat people or kill people every now and again? Have you ever heard anything like that from the natives?
I could give you the full description of what one is.
Would that be accurate?
Kind of, but not exactly.
Okay, fair enough. So I remember I'm in my tree stand, and I don't know if this was before the Wendigo story or after, but when I was talking to Scott about it, this memory just popped back into my head. I'm in my tree stand, and that bird had landed in the tree. Don't forget how thick it is, right? You can't see anything. And this bird, which I've never heard before, starts singing a song, a melody so fantastically beautiful, I started to cry. You're out there in the middle of nowhere. You're by yourself. You have time to think and get out of the stresses of life, and you're back to your roots, to the earth. You can smell the soil. You can smell the pine sap. The sun is barely filtering through the trees. And this bird, which I didn't see it, if I can recall, but it was like pretty darn close. And it's singing this long song, which I had never heard before and never heard again. And I go, what is that? What was that? Was that something special for me? Was it just a coincidence? Is it tied into the Wendigo story with John? Was it some protector angel? I don't know. That's kind of going deep, I know. But it's fun. It's fun to think.
No, that's one of the beautiful things about being in nature is that you have those moments that you're not going to have in everyday society here in the big city. Like, there's a lot of times, because I know exactly what you're talking about. Me and my father have talked about it, where you have these moments that seem like that they're more for you or the party present.
Yep.
And you would never have that experience again.
Right. I got one for you. So I'm 12 years old. I was the state champion archer at that time. And my dad and I never played sports much. I didn't care for it, but I loved to shoot the bow. He did too. So we would travel the circuit in New England and shoot the bow on the weekends. And I'm a young kid. There's a little patch of woods in front of the house, right? And I just love to go out there with my bow and arrow and shoot birds and squirrels and stuff, because that's who I was born that way. So one day, my dad come home and he's got 6 new golden aluminum arrows. He goes, these are for our targets, our weekends. Don't take these hunting. Okay, Dad. So what I would use to go hunting with these little wooden arrows that are warped and bent and therefore don't shoot straight. So I said, you really do owe it to the animal for a quick, clean kill, Mike. So if your dad don't know you're taking the arrow, no harm done, right? You got to do the right thing here. I take the arrows and I go out to the patch of woods and I'm hunting around. I don't see much. Well, down on the south end of this wood patch was this field. It was surrounded by birch trees, those pretty white trees. And the field itself was probably about 40 yards by 40 yards. And it was not a field made by man, but by it was a sandy soil. The grass, hay, it was more like a hay, would grow and die over the years. So there was a thick mulch of hay.
Sure.
And I come up to the edge, because there's really nothing there, right? The squirrels are in the hardwoods, the pines. But I just happen to come on this edge of this field, and there's a cottontail rabbit, which was big game. When you're shooting blue jays with your BB gun, you see a rabbit, like, oh, rabbit!
Oh, yeah.
So the rabbit, as they typically do, he runs and then he stops. And he's at the end of the field, and he's looking over at me like this. And he's standing there with his front legs out, and I shoot my bow. And the arrow, the golden aluminum arrow I'm not supposed to shoot, goes right between his legs and burrows under the grass and mulch and disappears. The rabbit runs to the opposite end of the field, stops for one more time. I had already had an arrow lined up. He stopped. I let that arrow fly right between his front legs, buries in the soil, and the thing runs off. And I'm looking for the arrows. It's a Thursday afternoon. Can't find my arrows. Now, I've been hunting all my life, and I know how to find arrows, right? Because this is what I do.
Right.
I can't find them. I'm looking the whole afternoon. I'm like, oh my God. Because once it goes underneath that hay, it could hit a rock and do a 45-degree turn.
You have no idea.
You don't know. So I'm in school. It's Friday now. And I'm like, tomorrow's Saturday. Guess where you're going with Dad? And you only got 3 arrows. My dad's an old Pollock. He'd whoop your ass. He'd actually kick you. So he didn't punch you or anything. He would kick you right in the ass. You'd go flying through the air.
Oh, that's how I was raised,
right?
too.
Yeah, I go, man.
It's just a matter if he was wearing his work boots or not when he did it.
Yeah, the pain tolerance or the level of pain you're going to experience based on the footwear.
You know, you really fucked up is if he's barefoot and he's like, all right, come in here. And he's only putting on one boot. It's like, oh, shit, I really fucked up.
Actually, they're good memories because they weren't really bad at all. It was just my dad.
It was more just being younger. When
and your dad's disciplining you.
Yeah.
So it's Friday, and I said to myself, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go through that field. Every foot of that field, I'm going to stick my fingers through the mulch on my hands and knees and finger through the mulch and do farm rows, back and forth, and do the whole entire field. And I did. It's Friday afternoon. It's my last chance to find him. I do the whole field. Nothing.
Really?
God's honest truth. I stand up, and I'm looking out, and the sky was blue, with these big, fluffy, white cotton ball clouds just hanging there. And I looked up, and I said, God, I know I'm not supposed to put you to the test. But if you help me find these arrows, I will never doubt you again. And immediately, that golden shaft shined through the mulch. Exactly when I said that, I went, oh. As I stood in disbelief as it's shining like a diamond through I looked, and out of my peripheral there was the other one. At the exact same time.
So would you consider that a religious experience?
I
in
do.
your eyes?
Sure.
Interesting.
Because I think, because as you go through life, is God real? Is not God real? Is Jesus real? Is not? Is Christianity? Is it Muslim? Is it nothing? Is it atheism? Is it evolution? You go through all these avenues, searching. So for me, in my experience, I think God did that intentionally to use me as an advocate for him. Like telling the story right now. Someone's going to hear that. Maybe it'll encourage them.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
At the same time, both arrows.
God's honest truth, without a moment delay. As soon as that last word left my lips, shined right out of the mulch, because it was a golden illuminant and the sun hit and it shined like a diamond, but yellow. Right. And as I stood in disbelief, there was yellow. Holy mackerel!
Oh man, I would shoot bricks.
Yeah, for sure. It's good. I love telling that story because it's true. So I do have a demon story. So we were, you interested in hearing that?
Yeah.
Okay. So me, Lonnie Damaris again, a guy named Tim, who's a Skoal dealership guy. He sold Skoal, and I met him through my taxidermy business. And he had a friend. The four of us were going to go drive from Massachusetts to Pennsylvania to like an area where we could hunt exotic game. So say it was a 10,000 acre plot of land. They put a fence around it, and they let these animals go, and you go hunt them. I know there's all kinds of people like it, people don't. But when you're a kid, you want to shoot something. They had boars in there and different types of exotic sheep. So we go on this hunt, and we're still young kids. I don't know, 21 maybe. And then the evening, they had a lodge. And in the lodge, they had a mounted head of every one of their goats and sheep and pigs. And they had a species called an aoudad, or a Barbary sheep. And they got these strange horns that come out like this. And it reminds me of all the devil movies. Whenever you see Satan, he's standing, he's got these big horns.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there drinking beer. And I go, that freaks me out because it reminds me of the devil. Mm-hmm. Well, my buddy Tim, the Skoal dealer guy, his friend starts spouting Satanism. Seriously. He's like, you need to get your shit together and make a decision. And he's advocating for the devil. And I'm like, holy shit. So I'm like, I'm out of here. So I go up into the bed to sleep, and we're all in one room. And you come through, you walk through the bedroom door. It was in the center of the expanse of the room. So I was on the left side of the door. This bad guy was on the right side of the door. My buddy Lonnie was across from me at my feet. So our feet were facing each other, and then Tim was kitty corner in the other corner of the room. So I fall asleep. Now, as a backup story, Lonnie and I would go on these hunts. We went to Maine, we'd go here, we'd go there, and we'd always play pranks on people. We'd take pink hairspray, and you'd be sleeping, you'd spray your hair pink, and, we put your finger in warm water or whatever. And Lonnie had brought this scary pig face Hollywood mask with the long hair, and it looked really scary, So, inadvertently, I wake up, Weston. I wake up, and I look up, and I can see Lonnie at the foot of my bed. He's got the pig, I can just see his head. He's creeping over. He's got that pig face on.
Yeah.
He creeps right over, and I sit up in my bed, and I go get him, Lon. And I'm sitting awake, looking, talking to him, and as it's dark, and he gets to the foot of the bed, It levitates and goes right up to the guy's face. And I freaking looked over at Lonnie and his foot moved. Like, holy shit! And I looked back and it was gone. And I was like, holy... I mean, I got goosebumps right now. So, whatever people want to think, like, oh, maybe you were asleep. Okay, I don't care what you think. It don't matter to me. This is my story. I woke up. I saw this entity. I sat up and I started talking. So to me, I was awake because when that thing levitated and went right up to the guy's face, immediately, that's not Lonnie. I looked back towards Lonnie's bed, and at that right moment, his little foot moved, and I looked, holy shit, he's in his bed. I looked back, nothing. I got out of the bed, Hail Mary, full of grace, and I started praying. I went, took a leak. I walked outside shaking. Our Father, I started praying, God protect me. So, that's interesting.
Damn.
Yep.
Yeah, that would scare the shit out of me if I was
For
in that
sure.
position. All right, gentlemen, so we're at about an hour. Do we want to take a little bit of a break?
Sure.
Come back to it?
Absolutely.
All right.
Exactly.
All right, we're rolling.
Your hometown was...
Lehigh, Utah. And that's where they filmed the original Footloose with
I thought
Kevin
you grew up
Bacon.
in Provo.
That's where I was born.
Oh, okay.
In the hospital there, because Lehigh didn't really have a hospital.
Sure.
So the last shindig in the movie Footloose, was it in a barn?
It's actually a roller mill for oats and stuff. They actually still make product out of it to this day.
Wow.
It's right off a highway. So if you're going south from Salt Lake City, on the highway going to like Orem or Provo or whatnot, which are bigger cities, you'll see it right off the highway there. And Lehigh is a lot more built up now than when I was growing up.
Wow.
So
back to... So, two things. So, my hometown, so I'm watching Men in Black 3 the other day.
Okay.
And...
Better than Men in Black 2, by the way, in my opinion.
He's talking to the two guys, and he's like, see that baseball right there? It was made in Chicopee, Massachusetts. And I go, oh my God, that's my hometown.
Sure.
So I put that on my... I took a short 2-minute section of that, or maybe less, and put it on my YouTube channel like a week ago. There's already over 1,000 views on that.
What do you do on YouTube?
That's just my YouTube. It's usually for the family stuff, so all my hunting videos, camping videos. So how that happened, we're going back to the Provo thing though. How that happened was, I'd have all these VHS tapes of me hunting from way back in 89, 90, and I wanted my kids to be able to see that when they're older, or whatever, even me.
I've had similar things actually before.
Like
too.
you wanted to do?
Yeah, I've actually made videos that I've made for my grandkids. Just
Wow, that's cool. 'Cause
Yeah,
you don't have grandkids yet.
exactly. I don't even have
Kids.
kids. As far as we know. It was just something I did on a whim because I was like, I have free time. I've done recording and stuff. I've done streaming and stuff before, and it's like, I feel like that I'm full of wisdom here in my youth.
And you
I'm
wanna
going
share
to
it.
try sharing it.
You should.
Because my opinions might change when I get older
And they will,
I might
for
be
sure.
subjugated.
That's why the same thought process, sorry to interrupt you, but the same thought process why I journal so much. Because it's like looking at a time capsule of how you felt 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll open up a journal that I wrote like 3 years back and I'm like, holy shit, I was retarded. I was absolutely retarded. Why did I believe that? Well,
See, and
sorry.
I did that for that reason too. I was like, whatever happens, happens. I'm just going to record it. And I made 10 different videos all on different various topics, from dating to just like hobbies and stuff like that. Like all sorts of stuff, like all an hour long. And the whole time I'm just sitting there at my computer just going 240s down the hatch. They're fun to watch nowadays though. But no, I completely feel that.
Yeah, so I'd watch the VHS, and then I'm like, who's got a VHS player now?
Right.
My kids aren't going to be able to watch this. So then I transferred it to DVD, and that's the whole bear story, and like I transferred all the VHS to DVDs, and I had bought a giant fireproof firebox, and I stored them all in there. And now, you got a Blu-ray player. It won't play that DVD. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to post it on YouTube. And that's how the whole channel started. It wasn't for hits or likes or for other people, really, but for my kids and my family, that they could see what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, if I make a 10-second video on my phone and I share it with you, the quality's not there. I'm not a techie guy, but if I download it to YouTube, then it comes up perfectly clear. So one thing I learned, like yesterday our turtles hatched, so on April 4th, this April, I came home from the post office and there's my sulcata spurred African tortoise digging a giant hole, laying eggs, and I go, oh! So I made a video. and she's dropping all those eggs in there. So there's a couple kids in the mail. Well, I want to get one of those baby tortoises. They ready yet? And I'm like, I don't know how long. So I get on Google, maximum of 120 days gestation period before they hatch.
Yeah.
120 days, 123. I'm like, nothing. They must have fried in there. So I called my turtle buddy, Rudy Padilla, tortoise buddy, and he's like, give it another month. And sure enough, I came yesterday, moved that thing. So where she laid the eggs, we took cinder blocks and made a barricade, so when they come out, they're trapped.
Right.
Because I have an acre and a quarter yard. And I looked, and sure enough, they all came out of the hole. So I made another video of that, and it's like, so you can see the eggs, then you can see the babies coming out of the hole. It was really cool. And back to Provo. Yeah. So I lived in Malad, Idaho for a while.
Okay, I'm familiar with it.
Mm-hmm. In Massachusetts, one of my hunting buddies, John Tenorowitz, he had a friend named Dave Raznicki, and he'd come hunting us once in a while, and he wanted to become a game warden. So he went through all the hoops, and he got hired on in Idaho.
Okay.
Well, his dad had passed, and we're all at the funeral, and Dave had drove from Idaho to Massachusetts, and he's going to go back. And he's like, yeah, come with me, Mike. I go, I think I will. So I jumped in my Blazer, and I followed him to his house, and we went to like South Dakota to where the president's heads are, and Mount Rushmore, and Niagara Falls, and we went all the way up the top of the country and then dropped down into Idaho. And then he wanted me to trap some nuisance beavers because I was a trapper. I had some experience. So
right.
I trapped one, and it was a big one, and I was excited. So I went to the local bar in town in Malad, Idaho, and I was showing everybody, and he got pissed. So we got in a fight. So I said, screw you, I'm out of here. So I just started living in the woods. So I made a campground up in the woods where I lived, and which was in Malad. So I'm bored. So I go fishing in the day, and at night I would take my car and I'd drive down the road, and if I'd see a jackrabbit, he'd be stuck in my headlights. I'd take my .22 and I'd shoot him. And so I just lived out there. I had a frying pan, and I bought bacon. I had a cooler full of beer, my frying pan, big old iron skillet, and the bacon. I would throw a slab of bacon in there for the grease, and then I would cook my fish or my rabbit. I lived there for like a month. But I was kind of getting bored, so I went into town, and I got a book on panning for placer gold.
Okay.
And it was like, well, by the way, we're all smoking cigars.
In our garage, which is excellent, by the way. It's perfect.
I think we're on the Joe Rogan show, but this is a little better. So mine is a Tabac Especial. It's a coffee-flavored, natural wrapper, good, mild smoke. You? What you got, Weston?
I got a Ghost Gurkha that Scotty was kind enough to get for us.
Nice.
You
too,
we
Scotty?
got 4 or 5 of those to bring up to the camping trip, the camping and hunting trip that we went to with Weston's dad, Dallin. This is, I don't know what the brand name is, Zeno, and it's a Nicaraguan tobacco.
Ooh, nice.
So, not bad.
So, I'm panning for gold. I got 2 pans. The book would say, get all the lighter stuff out of your pan, put it in the sun, and work another pan. Because the placer gold is shiny, just like gold, like a gold necklace, because of the polishing action of the stream.
Right.
So back up a minute, one of the criteria was if you can find a stream that comes out from underground, very good spot, because it could go through a vein and pull and if it's got black sand, or if it's got a lot of not turquoise, but crystal.
Sure.
So I find this stream right at my campsite. Comes right out of the ground, so I'm panning for gold. And sure enough, I get my pan and I look in there out of the dried sand, and there's a piece of gold, a 1/16 of an inch by maybe, right? A small little sliver, but it was shiny yellow. And gold fever set in, bro. I mean, it's a real thing. I'm like, all of a sudden I look up, the chest sticks out. This is my land. Look around. Is there anybody watching me? Because I'm going to put a stake here. I'm going to be rich. And I get my tweezers because they're supposed to check for the softness of it, and I grabbed it, pinched it, and shot it off into the grass. It disappeared. So the game warden, my ex-friend, the game warden, comes to me like a month later, and he's like, "Hey, you can't have a fire here. There's fire restrictions." And I'm like, "If I can't have a fire, I can't eat." He goes, "Well, you're gonna have to go home." So I have never talked to him since. That was 1992. But back up a little bit. 2 parts. I want to tell you the story about Ted Bundy, and I want to tell you the story how while I was living in the woods, I called my buddy John Tenerowitz, who I mentioned earlier, and I go, "Hey, John, how you doing?" And he wasn't doing good. He went to a forestry school to be a lumberjack, and he was working a crew, and he was the foreman, if I can recall correctly. And he had a new kid. They were trimming branches and trees away from power lines, and this new kid had just newly wed, just got married. He got electrocuted and died.
Oh shit!
And John felt kind of like responsible or something, you know, and he was pretty down. And he was dating this girl named Sue from high school forever, and they had broken up. I go, "John, get on a plane, fly to Salt Lake City. I'll pick you up. You can live in my tent for a couple of weeks. We'll just have fun." So he did, and he applied for the Bureau of Land Management in Idaho.
Okay.
He went back to New York, where he was living at the time. They called him. He went back, left everything, and moved to Idaho, and found a woman to get married. And he invited me to the wedding. So me and John Oliveira, again, God rest his soul, we're driving to Idaho from Massachusetts. And we're being part of the wedding ceremony and all, having a good old time and stuff. And I go, "Hey, you want to see where I lived? In that tent?" He goes, "Yeah." So we drive to that exact location, and there's a pickup truck stuck, like it was got kidney cord trying to come out of a dirt road, and there's a little bit of an incline or decline. It got, what do they call it when you're centered? Like the truck itself is on high centered.
Yeah.
So we were renting a Nissan Villager. We were smoking cigars every day in that thing. We bought like 300 cigars and we were smoking them like chimneys. And we used the Mercury Villager to pull the guy out. Apparently all we had to move him a little bit so he wasn't high centered. But I said, "What are you doing in there?" He goes, "I'm panning for gold." I go, "You're kidding me." I go, "Did you ever find any?" He goes, "All the time." I go, "Oh, I knew it." So back to the story with Ted Bundy. Hold on, I'm puffing my cigar. Lee Pfeiffer was a sheriff, and my buddy Dave Reznicki at the time had said, backing up when we were, there was no animosity between us. He said, "You ought to go with Lee, because Lee, twice a week, has to drive around in his Bronco just to make the presence of law shown, because we're out in the middle of nowhere.
Sure.
There's no police. He was a sheriff, so he wants to be visible, like, hey, don't forget, there's cops out here." And he goes, "You could see the country for free without spending any gas money on my Chevy K5 Blazer." So we're in there, and he's telling me the story of how hunters had found 2 or 3, can't recall, human skulls from Ted Bundy. He would capture these women, and what's another name? Was it Ted?
Are you talking about Butcher Baker?
No.
This is in Alaska.
No.
I had a story for you about Butcher
I'm
Baker.
there's another guy besides Ted Bundy, a mass murderer.
Tons of them.
I'm pretty sure it was Ted Bundy.
Where at was this again? I could probably.
Is it in Idaho?
Yes.
Idaho.
So he was on the I-15. So according to Sheriff Fife, he would come up with his victims off I-15, and he would get off the highway into the canyons where I was living. And the hunters over time had found human skulls of his victims. And apparently he confessed where some of them were, whatever.
So this guy's MO is captures a woman, releases them into the wild, sort of like hunts them down after.
I don't know about that.
Okay, that's Butcher Baker that I'm thinking.
Oh,
of.
no,
So,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
The most dangerous game kind of guy.
Yeah, but a woman? How about getting a guy? How about getting a Navy SEAL and just asking him, "Hey, you want to fight to the death in the woods? Come on, man up, buddy.
Sure.
You're going to go catch a poor woman who's frightened and scared and hunt her?
Sure.
You're a wimp. Ask some Navy SEAL guy. Fight."
That would be a hunt of a lifetime right there.
Then he would be killed. But so Lee had said they had never found any body parts, just the skulls. So I got a picture of my campground at my house still, where my tent was and where I was working, panning for gold and eating. And there was a large mountain hill behind me as a backdrop, and I would climb that mountain and sunbathe and hang out because I was kind of bored. Time goes by, you get kind of bored and you miss people. Well, one day I'm coming off the mountain, I'm heading back to camp, and I see these cedar trees. All, like 6 of them were close together. We're all knocked down like this, making a teepee.
Okay.
And I go, "Oh, there's going to be a deer bedded down in there for sure." So, sure enough, I'm walking up to the edge, and no kidding, is a shallow grave. But it was large. It was like from here to your car, so that's about 13 feet, maybe 15 feet. Same, and maybe 10 feet wide. I don't really recall. But there was no deer, but there was a pelvis and a backbone.
Holy shit.
And I go, holy shit is right. And I've been hunting and trapping all my life. I go, that pelvis looks like a person.
Yeah.
So right there at the edge is a little foot trail. Right on the edge of this shallow grave. I followed a foot trail. The foot trail goes right down to my camp, which is where it was a dirt road, which is off a dirt road, which is off another dirt road, which is off of I-15.
Yeah.
Just getting out of Utah.
Jesus.
So I'm like, holy crap. So I drive into town. I go to Lee Fife, and I go to his house, and his wife comes out. He's not here. I go, I tell her the story, and she's, okay, I'll let him know. And in the meantime, she's giving me, take this zucchini. She's got a garden, very nice. Take a zucchini, here's some squash.
For you.
Oh,
yeah.
Good old human beings, man. Salt of the earth people. So, well, I can't recall, but he wasn't coming to the next day, which was frustrating for me. I don't remember why. But I remember at night, I'm sitting there at my campfire, and I'm thinking of this poor human being being killed right here.
Right.
Like it's all going through my head. Like, he drove right up, he drove right down to my camp, killed this poor person, and put her in that shallow grave. Then my mind started playing tricks. I imagine the spirit coming down. Get out. Some creepy shit. Like, I'm not afraid of people. I'm not afraid of animals. But when you're out there in the woods by yourself at night, to me, it's spirits.
Well, I think when you're out in the woods like that, especially when you're by yourself, you have this sense of awareness that's almost primal.
Yep,
Like
I
when
agree.
you're just sitting here in the garage
No
at
big
night.
deal.
Yeah, exactly. But when you're doing the same thing, like there's something inside of you that comes out of dormancy.
Yeah.
And,
Well
just-
put.
Yeah.
That's your lizard brain.
The lizard brain.
That's my Neanderthal. 3%.
But yeah, like a part of your brain kind of awakens, like this is a little bit more of a different environment than the safety and comfort of what I'm normally used to.
Yeah.
So you
It's
were
time
more,
to wake up.
You were more worried about the spirit, or
Oh, for sure.
rather than like the actual guy showing up and
Oh,
killing.
yeah. Yep. Because I have guns.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I was in martial. Not that I say I can't.
So
I was
you
in
were
martial-
ready
He can shoot a person, he can't shoot a ghost.
Yeah, that's an animal, right? I'm like, yeah, sure, please.
One
Come, I'm hungry. I'm going to kill you.
One well-placed shot will put down the guy that's coming after you,
Yep.
man.
So yeah, that didn't bother me at all. But the supernatural, all my life has bothered me. Like whenever I dream, I had a dream the other night. I walked into this room and this entity, poltergeist, was grabbing me and throwing me against the wall, like boom, smack, grabbing me, like unseen entity, and grabbed me and whipped me against the other wall, just beating the shit out of me. Yeah, all my dreams are like that since I was a kid.
It's funny you mentioned that because I have something of a story myself that kind of goes to that. So, my grandfather, he has Indian bones in one of his rooms.
Wow.
Out in Indianola by Fairview, it's a very small town in the middle of Utah. And Indianola is this city that's kind of nearby, but when you're passing through like this whole area, it's like, oh, this is Indianola. It's not really the city, but it's just like the territory. It's kind of weird. It's a living there kind of thing to understand. But a lot of the Native Americans out there would bury their dead in like really weird random spots, and like they would have timbers just covering the bodies and stuff. Throughout all the years that my grandfathers, my dad, and everybody would be hunting out there, sometimes it rains and you'd go into shelves underneath some of these cliffs and rocks. And sometimes when, you're under there for a while, you start kind of digging around, seeing what's there. And if you find timbers and stuff kind of out of place, it's like, this is an Indian burial.
Wow.
If you find them, by the way, you're not supposed to touch them. You're supposed to just leave them be. The Indian nation gets pissed.
Well, yeah, anybody, right?
Exactly.
Anybody.
My grandfather didn't like such rules. So, a couple of times, he would either get the heebie-jeebies, but one time he got brave and he actually took some bones. And this is probably one of the precursors for a lot of my thoughts and philosophies when it comes to a lot of supernatural shit.
Mm-hmm.
So he has this box that has these bones in it, and he's told me about them for years. And every time that I see or in the same room as that goddamn box, I get the willies. And I thought maybe it's just little old Weston freaking out over nothing.
Yeah.
No. That when I was a kid, that was one thing, but I'm a grown-ass man now, and every time I'm in that same room, I get the freaking jitters. And it gets worse, too, because the last time, they have a bed in there. They call it the guy's room, and it's a bedroom, downstairs in the basement. It's the quietest, coolest room in the entire house. And it has all the hunting stuff. It's a cool room, but I always felt uncomfortable in it. And I would sleep in there from time to time, but every time I slept in there, I would hardly get jack shit for sleep. The last time I slept in there, 2 years ago, I was having a fit of sleep, and I had this... Let me just tell you what happened. So, I was laying in bed, and room's not different or anything from what I remember, but I remember seeing this black ghost-like shape, like the smoke monster from Lost.
Right.
But kind of like manifested into something. Freaked me out, so I got up and was starting to haul ass. Picked me up and started choking me out.
Wow.
It was so intense and real.
No kidding.
But then I woke up.
Wow.
But I wasn't able to decipher that I was dreaming because that was probably the most realistic nightmare I've ever had. And I've had some intense nightmares. But there was something different about that one. I was like, nope, I am getting the fuck out. And sure enough, I went and slept on the trampoline outside that night. And when my grandfather woke up to go to the farm that morning, he saw me on the trampoline with just a pillow and a blanket. He's like, what the fuck? Why are you sleeping on the trampoline? You're 30 years old.
You got a grown man there, Lots.
Yeah, and I was just like, I can't explain it, Granddad, but even now, like, going into that room when it's daylight and stuff, I still get the jitters, and I always remember that night, and I'm just like, fuck that.
Yeah.
You know? So I made it a point, when my grandfather passes, I'm taking those goddamn Indian bones, and I'm going to give them back to the proper authorities.
That's
because
cool.
I do not want them.
Yeah.
I don't think we should have ever had them.
Right.
And I hope that I don't have some fucking curse on our family because of it.
Do you think that there's like a natural human ability or human instinct to guard against supernatural things like that?
Wow, that's an interesting insight.
So like
To guard against it, I think so.
Yeah, by ignoring it, pretending it's not there. That might be part
Ignorance,
of
sure.
it.
that's definitely
Yeah.
part of
Yeah.
it. I think that's how most people
Yeah.
deal with it. But the thing that made me think about this is the heebie-jeebie feeling, right?
Right.
So whether or not you recognize that the bones are in the room or whatever it is, you get that weird feeling.
Right.
And you, Weston, of anybody that I know, trust your instincts and go with your gut more than anyone that I've ever met. And so maybe the word that I brought up earlier, I'm a nerd, so interoception, right? Maybe he's honed that to such a degree where he's like, no, something's fucking wrong here. And over the years, you've listened to yourself enough where you're like, this
You
is
built it like
probably
a muscle memory.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's become stronger.
Yeah.
I would kind of go with that because I have pretty good perception on that. I feel like I'm not going to go out on a limb and say like I'm great at it, but Scotty's mentioned it to me so many times over the years that I've started to believe that maybe he is onto something. So
Yeah.
I kind of just accept it for what it is now.
Yeah, you have a different kind of instinct, and you listen to it. So even to the point where I'm like, Weston will say things to people where I'm like, dude, that's not polite, or that's rude, or whatever it is, and it will turn out in the end that
He was
person...
right.
Yeah, exactly. And then it works out for the best. It's
Yeah.
really interesting. It's
like a spiritual discretion. Like you're
Sure.
tuned in. You're tuned in. A
Sure.
sixth sense.
It's like Weston's subconscious is on overdrive, is a way of thinking about it. But
That same night with the spirit thing where you slept on the trampoline, I went in my truck. I
Yeah.
slept in my truck. And I'm like, I'm afraid. I'm going to go sleep in my truck where I feel safe.
sure.
Shit, if I would have had my truck, I would have slept in that too. I feel that.
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
Butcher Baker.
Well, hold
Right.
that thought.
Go
So
for
the
it.
sheriff comes in the morning.
Oh, okay.
So I'm
Oh,
waiting.
yeah,
I got
that's right.
I got my fire going. I got coffee brewing. I'm like, come on, man! I got to solve a murder scene. I'm going to be on TV. And he shows up slower than molasses. He's doing 6 miles an hour in that Bronco. He pulls up. He walks over. It takes him a half hour, just nonchalant. And I really like that. I like that laid back energy. He comes over. He drinks his coffee. Goes, okay, let's go see. We walk over, and he looks and he goes, huh? He goes, I don't know. I'll take it to the state police forensics lab. And he
Okay.
took it. And then that's when my friend, just a couple of days later, came back and said, can't have a fire. You got to get out of here. And I think I did hear, yeah, and it was just an animal. It was just an animal. I don't know if the sheriff told me or Dave told me. I can't recall.
So it didn't turn out to
Turned
be
out to be,
human.
no, it was just an
Okay.
animal, which was surprising to me, because the pelvis looked unique.
Well, at this point, how much experience would you say you had as a hunter?
All my life. I ran a trap line starting at 9 years old with nobody in the family teaching me. I catch my first muskrat I bring that to the local taxidermist, and can you stuff this for me? A year goes by. Now I'm 10. Literally waited a tenth of my entire life, and it's still not done, which was for a 10-year-old kid in eternity. And I'm like, can I have it back? He's like, sure. So he gives it to me. I skin it. I got it on the wall. Now I'm 10 years old. I shoot a blue jay with my BB gun. I go over and I go, can you stuff this for me? He's like, get out of here, kid. And I remember I had a little yellow dirt bike, and I'm pedaling home because he was a couple miles from my house. And I'm pedaling home all disgusted, angry. And I'll just teach myself. In the back of Fur Fishing Game magazine, they had Learn Taxidermy, Correspondence Course, Northwestern School of Taxidermy. And that's how it started.
That's amazing.
45 years ago.
So the reason I asked that is because it seemed like that your first impression that it wasn't an animal pelvis that you saw.
Right.
Do you still think that it could be human? Or...
Right, because there was some speculation that maybe they didn't want me to know.
Right.
Maybe they got rid of me.
There's
with the
conspiracy
fire
behind
idea,
it.
like maybe, or maybe like, hey, let's get them out of here. And why would they do that? I don't know. But those thoughts, they're legit thoughts. They come into my head. Was it really necessary to boot me out of there? You know,
So,
why did you? Was that just because you were vengeance? Or was it really a fire hazard? Or was it like,
get the hell out.
get out of
here
here so we can do some investigation?
Yeah.
Or if they're going to do that, why not just tell me? Hey, we're doing an investigation. Got to go.
Maybe because it could have been linked to a little bit more of a high-profile case, and they just wanted people to get the hell out so they could have a little bit more peace and
Possible.
quiet to it.
I don't want to like read into anything that's, doesn't necessarily be part of the story.
No, sure.
But you're
Just
open-
out of
it's like
curiosity.
open-minded.
Right. Like I'll tell you what. You guys, Ouija board. Now, I do not recommend using a Ouija board because I do believe in spirits, good spirits and bad spirits. I do believe that. And this friend of mine, Christine Chase, we're doing a Ouija board at my mom's house. She was gone. We're at the front desk, the table where we ate dinner. And we're like, look, we really want to see if this thing works. So you're supposed to like just touch the
planchette?
Yep. Mm-hmm. And you're not supposed to actually, just supposed to like barely make contact with it.
Right.
And there was a question of, is there an evil spirit here or something like that? And that thing flew off the table, flew off the board, flew off the table and smashed into the wall and bounced on the ground. And we were just going like this. So that freaked me out. I left my house that night, did sleep there, and I've never touched a Ouija board since. Because you don't want to let, if that's all real, which I think it is, you don't want to invite that into your environment. You know? I'm like, I'd rather a good angel. I don't need that. Go somewhere else. So I've never played with one again, ever. That's a true story. They're all true. They're all true.
I heard a lot of stories about Ouija boards, and they're not usually good.
Right?
That's something I've always respected about you,
Hasbro.
Mike. Is so what I say when I said open-minded, right? You don't necessarily believe that the pelvis that you saw was human.
Right.
But you're open to the idea that, hey, maybe something was going on.
Correct.
You don't necessarily believe that the Ouija board, that was an evil spirit. But you said, yeah, maybe. And maybe I should respect the feeling that I have.
Amen. Right? Just like Weston, right? You pay attention to that inner self, that sixth sense, and listen to it.
Well, a good spirit would probably not do something to that extreme. Something a little bit more unpredictable or violent would probably have that countermeasure.
Absolutely.
Right.
And trust your instincts, right?
Yeah.
So the reason that my stepdad moved, he was in military police in the military, grew up in Michigan, a small farm. The reason that he told me that, the catalyst to get him to move from Michigan to Arizona was he read a report of the local police reporting a suicide of a black adult male, went into the woods to commit suicide and shot himself in the chest 4 to 5 times. And he's like, they took him out into the woods and killed him, is what really happened. That was his thought. And he's like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. And then he moved from Michigan to Arizona.
Who, like the KKK or?
The sheriffs, like the actual law enforcement of the area.
Wow.
So his thought was, and I don't know if it's true, right?
I know what you mean.
But he's reading the report of like suicide,
5
shot
times?
4 or 5 times in the chest.
Yeah, how do you?
No way.
Right.
And so he just took that and was like, nah, I gotta get out of here. So the
Well,
open-mindedness.
when you told me that story, it's like, what the hell? 4 to 5 times in the chest. Good God. And especially the fact of like, maybe I could be wrong here, but if you're going to commit suicide in the woods, it's going to take one bullet, and you're not going to shoot yourself in the chest. That just sounds like a painful
you shoot yourself
endeavor.
in the head.
You shoot
Right.
yourself
You
in
don't
the
wanna
head.
suffer.
Nice, clean, quick,
Yep.
and done
Yep.
to the point. 5 times in the chest, or 4 times.
Yeah.
God forbid, that one bullet will make a difference. Jesus
Right?
Christ.
Right?
I think he's onto something personally.
For
but-
sure.
My mom. So my mom grew up in Alaska. My mom's side of the family from Alaska. My grandpa on that side was in the Navy, and that's how they originally got up there. Outdoorsman, really big into car racing. They had a automotive store where he would sell automotive parts for race cars and build his own engines and different things. But when she was going to school in Alaska, her teacher. Some of this story might not be 100% accurate, but I'm obviously telling from memory. Her teacher in elementary school was married to Butcher Baker.
Wow.
And so she went on a field trip in elementary school to their house. And so she took them there as part of like, I guess like a wilderness.
A field trip?
Yeah, a field trip, right?
No, we're not going to the zoo.
We're going to go to my house. Right? Which is
Here's some
weird.
cookies.
But it was as part of like a wilderness or
Adventure.
or like hunting introduction, right?
Okay.
Because Butcher Baker was a hunter,
Oh.
right? "Quote unquote" a hunter, and took him
Defaming
down.
my sport.
Took him down into the basement, and you could picture like a decked out hunting basement with all the traps and the chains and different things that they have. And there's this big hunting map. This is from my mom. She remembers seeing this as a kid. This big hunting map of the area, and there's different spots that are marked on there. And so they thought at the time, oh, this is where he would go to survey or whatever. You go out to like pre-hunt, right? See where
Scouting.
Scouting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So see where the herds are at, see where the animals are at.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that map is where he would capture women, and he was a bush pilot. Wow. So he would capture women, go and put them out there, and then leave them out there for a day or two, fly back out there and hunt them down and kill them. So the map that she saw on the wall was marking where the women were dropped so he could later go and hunt them down. Ain't that some shit?
I hope they torture that guy to death.
Well,
You know what I mean?
I do. I know.
Cut off one finger, wait a couple days, cut off another. We got a lot of body parts before you're dead because you got to weed people out like that. You can't have them in society. You can't rehabilitate. What are those people? Pedophiles. You got to kill. No, you're not getting anything out of me for that. You kill them.
I think that serial killers. I don't know about the pedophile thing. If there's a biological reason or if there's a sociological reason.
Take them out of the herd, man.
Sure.
Take them out of the herd. I don't care what your reason is. You
I
gotta
respect
go.
that opinion.
You gotta go.
As far as serial killers, Wes and I have had a long conversation about this. I think that there is like a biological reason for serial killers.
Yeah, some kind of a mental dysfunction. Oh,
No,
genetic?
So genetic and for the betterment of the species. So get this. So same thing with psychopaths, right?
Yeah.
So psychopaths. This is from
Jordan Peterson.
right? Psychopaths. They go from,
Shout out to Jordan Peterson.
JP, man. They fluctuate anywhere between, I think it's 3% is like the middling. So like between 1% and 5% of the population. And the reason is that that mentality or that way in acting in the world is actually really beneficial if there's not that many of them. So if there's only 1% of people that are psychopathic, you can take advantage of everybody around you and make a great living. Right? So you can sort of move place to place.
Yeah, like Stalin. Lenin, Stalin, Hitler.
Leech off of people, become extremely powerful.
Yeah.
Get a lot of resources. But then if there's too many of them, everybody in the society is like, no, fuck you. I'm thinking about you. You might not be telling me the truth. So then you start to become more skeptical. I think that the serial killer is sort of the same way. It's teaching the tribe or the whole, all of humanity basically, to not trust everybody. So there could be somebody that's not up to any good, and so you have to protect your children, you have to protect your family.
Yeah.
You have to be on your guard, so to speak. That's why I think serial killers actually exist.
See, and when we had this conversation, I took that and I thought about it on my end, and I kind of thought about it too. It's like, what if it was a way of the species trying to advance to a different level? Because you're always going to have people that are trying to be more of the apex predator, and that's how us humans became top of the food chain, because you had individuals in past variances that would become better at hunting, killing, to think differently than others.
Right, so if you're in a tribe of Neanderthals, or let's go even a little, not that far back, you'd want somebody like that to be, when you're going into battle to another tribe, say you're in the Scotland Highlands, right? You'd want aggressive people like that are fearless. I would imagine,
Right.
to further your tribe, because you don't want a bunch of Davids out there and Goliaths, right? You don't want a bunch of feminists or beta males.
Sure.
It's the people like that. Not that I'm advocating for those type of people, but like imagine your clan is going to go fight that other clan, right? The more manly, tough, aggressive, masculine people, the more advanced your tribe, your clan will go. Potentially.
Well, you just want them pointed in the right direction.
Well, you think right? if you got a bunch of basket weavers and you got to go fight that, the Vikings.
Absolutely.
You're going to lose.
Yeah.
Because you're not that aggressive. You got to be, I don't care what happens to me, to actually succeed and win, I would imagine.
Right.
Generally speaking.
But we've entered a stage where that's not socially acceptable unless you're in the military. And if you're in the military and you have somewhat of an unstable mind, you're not allowed in. So there's no real outlet for these individuals. They can't be like the berserkers of the Vikings, for example. They have no outlet. They have nothing to do. So
I think some of the police officers that I've met are exactly that role.
And they could be. They could be better at integrating themselves into roles that suit their needs. Dexter, the serial killer show, I don't know if you've heard of it or seen it. It's a show where Dexter, he's a forensic analyst, but he kills other serial killers to kind of help hide his killing habits and stuff. He's found a role in society that fits his needs and a way to do so. And there might be other people that do such things in the world, because there's obviously going to be serial killers, and if they're really good at what they do, you're never going to find them. You only hear about the serial killers that get caught.
Right.
That's a hell of a way to integrate your shadow.
Be the FBI agent that's got the law behind you, and you're the actual killer of the serial killers. Hey. How's your cigar, guys?
Excellent.
Good. Starting to get to the more spicy part.
I mine too.
I like the back half better.
I do too. Sometimes I do, yeah. Like this one right now is getting really good.
Yeah,
so it's like mellow from the start, but then as you get down, the
more
harsher,
flavors. You like harsh or you like more flavor?
I like harsh.
Then you'd want to get a dark Maduro wrapper, a dark black.
Maduros were what you used to smoke a lot more in back.
That's why I got the Gurkhas. Yeah.
Did you ever dip your end of the cigar in whiskey or anything like that?
Yeah,
we've done that a couple of times.
Where is the whiskey, by the way? You gotta have a little glass of scotch.
We have rum. I don't think we have scotch.
Rum.
Same.
No, good. So, back to the Lyme disease. So,
sure.
I think for all people, the older you get, the harder it is for your body to function, because you're always going to be assaulted by viruses and bacterias and all the stuff we mentioned before. So your best game plan is to build a healthy immune system and work at that. You got to figure out what works the best for you. Like there's some like lately I've been going to bed at 10 o'clock. My kids are mad because their curfew is 9:45.
Okay.
Because I've got my body used to falling asleep at 10 o'clock. So I'm trying to create a sleeping habit that I do every day so my body gets used to it. And it sounds so silly and simple, but let me tell you, when you're 55 years old, it matters.
How much sleep do you get?
I get 8 hours to 9 hours.
My man.
Yeah. So at 10 o'clock, I start feeling sleepy.
Yep.
And I just let the body fall asleep. So if the kids came in at 10:15 and woke me up, I'm up all night. So I have these methodologies that I do that I won't mention because I do, then somehow they won't work anymore. So they're my personal things that I figured out. You got to figure out your own. So at 10 o'clock-ish, I get sleepy, crash on the couch, got to have that blue light. Some people say blue light from the TV is really bad. It helps me because it distracts my brain from thinking.
Okay.
And then I fall asleep and I'll wake up a couple hours later and I'll go into the bed and fall asleep in the bed. So, but like if I fall asleep at 10 and I wake up at 10:15, I'm up all damn night.
Can I share something with you?
Please.
So I've been listening to, at work, I listen to probably 4 to 6 hours of podcasts every single day. I can't get enough content because when you listen to 4 to 6 hours a day, like you run out, and there's not the quality content that I really want to listen to. So Jordan Peterson, Chris Williamson from Modern Wisdom, a ton of different. I was a big Joe Rogan fan for the longest time. Since he went exclusive on Spotify, I haven't listened to a single one, just because I can't download it without going Spotify Premium. I'm gonna extremely Jewish because it's $10 a month. I think.
No, you don't have to because I'm on Spotify and I don't pay and I get to listen to it.
You have to listen to it live.
No.
You can download it.
Oh, into my phone?
Yes.
Oh, that's what you mean? Oh, maybe. Okay, I don't. Yeah, okay.
That's the thing, and I won't pay for the data to listen. So anyway,
all right.
That's my own.
You're
I mean,
frugal.
isn't there a way
You're
that
frugal.
you could download it onto your phone while you're at home?
No.
On data?
No, you have to be. Yeah, you have to be a premium.
I'll give
member.
you the $10 a
No,
month.
that's fine. So
I know what you
it's
did.
actually been a good thing, right? So I was so stuck in Joe Rogan, and not stuck, but I was spending
You like
3
it
or
so
6
much?
hours.
Yeah.
There's a lot, so I
Yeah.
got to branch out and listen to these other guys. So the thing what I wanted to share with you is Dr. Andrew Huberman. So he's
Heard of him.
he's
I've listened
a
to him, yep.
Stanford neuro-ophthalmologist. So he's a brain doctor at brain professor at Stanford that specializes in ophthalmology, specifically through the brain. So how your eyes interact with your brain.
Because it's the same. Your eyes are part of your brain.
A huge
They're connected. They're literally part of your brain.
The largest portion of your brain to be connected to a single area of your body is your eyes. We're visual creatures.
Yeah.
So the thing that, if I've learned anything from him, which I've learned a ton, the thing that he will always harp on is getting sunlight in the morning.
Huh.
So when you wake up, he says it is vital. Between 10 and 15 minutes, he actually recommends up to 30, but who has 30 minutes every morning to stand outside? But literally every single morning, go outside, get sunlight into your eyes. So he recommends that, and then doing some sort of physical exercise, and then not drinking caffeine for the first hour to hour and a half of the
Holy
day.
crap! So
The first hour and a half?
Yes.
Listen, right? So on so two things. Because the morning light is different.
It is.
It is different.
It's a different wavelength.
It's different, and it's a different energy you feel.
Yep.
Maybe because it's a brand new day, whatever it is, it's different. So if you're out there in the morning, it's a different feeling than at 12 noon
Yep.
and 2. And then Rogan had on some neurologist the other day. He was talking about, I forgot the type of, there's something in your blood that dissipates by 9 o'clock. He said, so don't drink your coffee till 9. Because by drinking the coffee, that caffeine keeps that, whatever it was, in your blood longer, and that's why you get the crash at 2 or 3
Is it
o'clock in the
cortisol?
afternoon.
No?
No. Started with an A, if I can recall.
Okay.
So so I've been doing this intermittent fast. So I stop eating dinner at 5 o'clock. I don't drink, I don't eat or drink, just water, till 9 in the morning. Well, I was doing it till 7, which was 14 hours a day, and I wasn't dropping any weight because I've done this before in the past. If I do 16 hours a day,
Yep.
I can get to the point where I'm losing a pound a day. Because you get in that ketosis and you just start burning.
Yep.
So I listened to this doc say, hold your coffee off till 9. And I'm like, I'm going to do that. And sure enough, so number 1, I'm getting 16 hours, which benefits my fast. And 2, I don't get that 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon crash.
Yep.
So my wife, her and I are doing that right now. I'm going to talk really loud because the car's coming by. We're in the garage.
Beep, beep.
So the other thing that I want to say, so Dr. Huberman was one thing. So get 10, 15 minutes of sunlight in the morning.
Yeah.
That will help your circadian rhythm.
Huh.
The coffee thing that we just talked about. No caffeine for the first hour and a half. Doesn't matter when you wake up, by the way.
Right.
But an hour to an hour and a half. It has to do with your internal body temperature as well.
Yeah.
Because your body has not just the circadian rhythm, but your body has a natural temperature cycle that it goes through. So something like, I'll just throw a number out because I don't know exactly, but it's about 2 hours prior to your normal wake time is the lowest body temperature point. And it's based off of that, whatever the caffeine is doing, that helps you not have that afternoon crash.
Huh.
The other thing that I wanted to bring up, so you had chlamydial pneumonia.
Chlamydia pneumonia, right.
Which is
not to be confused with genital chlamydia.
Different thing.
I'm not as excited anymore.
Well, just like the cold sore is a herpesvirus. It's not genital herpes, but it's still a herpesvirus.
Right.
So this is a common co-infection with Lyme disease.
So I'm told.
That's
right.
what I've read
Because I
as
have
well.
that plus Bartonella, which
Yep.
is a co-infection. So for people out there who don't know, biting insect. So now they're thinking any biting insect can transmit to you Lyme disease or all these other infectious diseases. So imagine this. They tell you if you're a drug user not to share the needle because you could take whatever you have in your body and transfer it to the next person with the needle. So if there's a mosquito taking his needle and sticking it into you and sucking out your blood, and then he goes and he lands on Weston, could you transmit something to Weston? So they're thinking
Absolutely.
it's very possible.
AIDS and
So,
bacterial infections and all sorts of stuff.
West Nile virus and malaria, and so there's a host of things out there trying to get you. So again, back to build your immune system, work on that. It's a lifelong adventure. It's for your own health and your well-being, not only the quantity of years you live, but the quantity of life in those years. So continue to do what you need to do. And that kind of changes and morphs and switches. Like I'll take creatine monohydrate, which helps the ATP in my cells. So the mitochondria in your cell is like helps with energy and respiration. It's like a little powerhouse in your cell. And androstenedione triphosphate or something like that, the ADP. So the creatine monohydrate helps with me with that. So, but your body gets used to it after a while. So I was just talking to my naturopath last week, and he's like, okay, do 2 months on and take a month off, right? So if your life is boring for you and you're stuck in a rut, man, you can get into the health thing and enjoy your life more. It's a constant flux. It's always changing, which is good. And you can keep adding things to your life and subtracting things like SAMe. Have you ever heard of SAMe?
No.
It's a methylation for your brain to remove toxins out of your brain. So that's one of the things I do every day.
Why does your naturopath... I have so many questions for you.
Tell me.
That's all right. So we'll start with creatine. So why the month off? So 2 months on, 1 month off.
Yeah.
What's the reasoning behind
because
that?
sometimes your body gets used to it. You know what I mean? So if you drink a beer and you get drunk, you keep drinking the one beer, and a year later you need a 6-pack.
Interesting.
Type of thing.
So everything that I've read as far as study, so creatine monohydrate is one of the most studied supplements that we have.
Okay.
And it's actually one of the only, besides like anabolic steroids, one of the only substances that will help you build muscle mass. And so that was like the longest, exactly. That's why you're so jacked. That's why you look like a manly man in the garage with no shirt.
We're all naked, by the way. We're at least the top half.
Hey, only thing that would be better is if we were in the sauna right now. That'd be great.
Or our cold cryo tank.
Right, yeah. Cryo. The thing that I want more people to be educated about when it comes to creatine, so there are neurological benefits that are being studied right now. So it actually acts as a nootropic. So there's parts of your brain that are actually benefiting from the creatine as well. With older people, so creatine is not just for the active building of muscle. So most people think, oh yeah, I'm going to get jacked, I'm going to start lifting, I need to start taking creatine, and I'll take a break or whatever. It actually helps if you supplement with it. I've heard recommendations, just supplement with it every day for the rest of your life.
No kidding.
Because
I'm not surprised.
It also stops the degeneration or the loss of muscle mass over time. So when you have an old fuck like you, right, you're getting older, it's normal, and me too, right?
I'm 55, proud of it.
Right.
Survivor.
So as you get older, you lose muscle mass over time, and creatine slows that process. So not only is it helping you build muscle mass if you're doing the strength exercises, but it also slows down the loss of muscle mass.
Degeneration. Like for me, I'm really doing good. I'm like way better than I have been the last 14 years. My son Luke was born. He's going to be 17 September 2nd, Friday. He'll be 17. And it really hit me then. So the process from 1996 till then, up and down like a roller coaster, but you're still young and vibrant, but then you're buying a house, you're selling a house, you're getting married. You got all these other stresses, jobs and stuff that start to wear you down. Yeah. And when he was born, that was the beginning of the end. And then I would say probably about 2 years ago, I finally came out of the fog.
Sure.
So to speak. But the one thing that's still my worst part is like I can't carry something heavy from here to the truck without being tired. Wow. The truck is probably 15 yards from us right now. So like if I carried a 5, I'll be out of breath.
So this is a different symptom I wanted to talk to you about, and this is not related to. I mean, that sounds horrible. That sounds not fun to do.
Yeah, like I couldn't be a clerk at the post office or grabbing them heavy boxes. I could not do that.
Sure. So the thing that I wanted to tell you about, going back to the Andrew Huberman, and I keep wanting to say pneumococcal pneumonia, but it's not. It's chlamydial pneumonia.
Yeah.
You told me a story about going to a doctor, being out of breath.
Yeah.
So you would feel like you're out of breath, like you take this big breath, but you don't get any oxygen.
100% accurate. That's exactly right.
Ever been evaluated? Because
yes, I went to a pulmonologist.
No, so not for that.
Oh,
right?
Cardiologist?
Nope.
Okay.
Psychological conditions. So the other thing that I listen to all the time is psychology podcasts. So I listen to psychologists. Jordan Peterson is what got me into that, but then I branched off to a bunch of different people. Dr. K I'll throw out. So Healthy Gamer GG on Twitch. a bunch of different psychologists. Anyway, panic disorder. So panic disorder, they're not entirely sure what happens, but if you've ever heard of someone having a panic attack, exactly the same thing of what you're talking about, where you can breathe but you feel like you can't get any air. They do not know what causes it. There's a couple of theories, but all of the symptoms that you talked about in that story remind me of panic disorder. And you can reliably, so last thing I'll say about it, you can reliably induce panic disorder or a panic attack with someone with panic disorder by giving them one full breath of CO2 rich air. And so you do that and that will trigger a panic attack. So everything that you described, I'm not a fucking doctor, right? But I listen to a lot of podcasts, I listen to a lot of
you're sharp.
psychologists.
You retain a lot of information.
That sounds like that to me. So
but the word panic is throwing me off because I'm not really panicking. I'll be on the couch. Fortunately doesn't happen to me anymore.
Okay.
I'd be sitting there and I couldn't breathe. Not like, people with asthma, they say they feel like there's an elephant on your chest. Not like that. Mm-hmm. It's like all of a sudden you take a big breath and you don't feel like you actually took a breath. It's like the effect of breathing keeps your body alive. It's like you feel like it's not actually doing anything.
I see.
And then you can get into the panic mode, which is a bad thing, right? So you got to be able to calm yourself down.
Sure.
So I think I wrote in my notes it was a parsley extract. But again, just to reiterate for all you people who are interested, the more things you do, I think the better. So rather than taking just parsley to see if it works, because you don't want to try 3 months of that to see if it helps you, because what if it doesn't? So isn't it better to take A, B, C, D, and E and feel better and not really know which one helped you?
Absolutely.
I'd rather do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Is there like a stack that you use? So stack is a term. No.
No. Like when I was doing a Cowden protocol, parsley was one of it. So I bought, each month you'd have these different tinctures, and I forgot parsley was one of them, but there was a lot of different botanicals from Peru that the native Peruvians would say, this helps with this helps with that. So he had organized them all together as a system to help with your immune system. It worked great.
I'll just say, I'll throw it out there. I talk, whenever supplements come up, you could try and use all sorts of stuff, whether it's for lifting or positive benefits or trying to ward off negative effects, like that kind of thing. I really believe strongly multivitamin, omega-3 fatty acids, fish oil, vitamin D, and creatine monohydrate.
Let me add, sorry. So when anybody's taking an oil-based vitamin, like vitamin E, D, A, you want to take it with food that you cooked with fat, because it's an oil-based vitamin and you want your gallbladder to secrete. What is it that it secretes? I can't recall off the top of my head.
I don't know either.
Yeah. So it'll break down. So your gallbladder breaks down the fat. So like if you're eating a meal, your stomach only digests protein, but the gallbladder secretes bile, and the bile just breaks down the fat, and then it goes into the large intestine. I think the small intestine is an alkaline base, so it's all part of the system of utilizing every different part. So again, you're taking an oil-based vitamin. You want to take it with food that you ate with an oil, a fat, a butter, so your gallbladder will secrete bile, so you get better absorption of the vitamin D.
That's why. So I 100% believe you. I don't know what mechanism it is, but so when I had a piss poor diet when I was younger, still working for Target, alcoholic, and just eating literally like Papa John's,
Cheetos.
Jimmy John's. I'm not even joking.
I hear you.
Terrible diet, but I almost had to have my gallbladder out, because when you eat just a bunch of like bad saturated fats and fast food and that kind of thing, it messes up your gallbladder, and so they'll remove it, and it changes the way that your body processes fat. So the other thing, you told me this, is if you're using a lot of those supplements, make sure they're refrigerated.
Yeah.
So because they can actually go rancid.
Correct, especially like fish oil. Like you can buy a larger supply of fish oil, and then you store it in the freezer, and then keep one jar out, keep it in the fridge.
What's the shelf life of fish oil like that then?
Hell, I don't know. But think about it, right? So it's a gel cap, but it's permeable in a sense. Like your tire is rubber.
Yep.
Air gets through that rubber over time, and that's why you'll get lower tires in the summer.
Yep. And
the air gets through the gel cap and starts to oxidate the fish oil. So you don't want that.
You can't smell it if it's in the capsule. You can't tell if it's gone rancid. So if you have like the actual fish oil, just oil, then you could actually smell the
You can
rancid
tell.
going through. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Unless you're meat, and then you
You
can't,
can't my
tell.
poor wife can't smell anything right now.
But yeah, fish oil. I take a shitload of fish oil. I take 3 grams a day. I think 3.5 grams. Something
That's
like
pretty
that.
damn good. I remember something with your body weight, right? Like a gram per 50 pounds.
I don't know what the recommended is.
It probably varies. They change your mind every 3 weeks just to keep things going.
That's one of those things that once. So I went to the cardiologist as far as my own health problems, trying to figure out what caused that loss of consciousness. And they took my a bunch of different blood tests, but they did my cholesterol.
Yeah.
And the nurse that read there's HDL and LDL, and I think HDL is the
good one.
Good cholesterol.
Yeah.
So it was like 91 or something like that, which she said I've never seen it that high. I don't know how you did it, but that's
Fish
amazing.
oil.
It's fish oil. It's
Yes.
fish oil. She goes, it's heart protective. That's excellent. Whatever
Yeah.
you're doing, just keep doing it.
Yeah.
So, what got us on the panic attack, and then we started going
Oh, you're
through that?
asking questions, I think. We were talking about different supplements and breathing. Because I went to the pulmonologist. I remember maybe I
Right.
got COPD and I can retire from the post office because I can't breathe. But that's gone now.
Right. Well, that's good.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
great.
Absolutely.
And I think the main point that I've taken anyway from the Lyme disease thing, this is what from the very beginning, everyone that has talked about Lyme disease is immune system. So make sure your immune system, do everything that you can for it, sleep, eat healthy, try your supplements, but everyone's going to be a little bit different.
Correct.
Right? So that's why I recommended Wim Hof to you.
Right.
And in that initial conversation that we had that really like started our friendship,
Okay.
I'm like, you ever heard of Wim Hof? We go, hey, I'm reading his book right now. And I'm sitting on, like, Jesus, like,
Right.
you're the kind of guy that's going to go and search for everything.
Right. You as well. Us three. 3 peas in a pod.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, right, between death and life, pain and suffering.
Sure.
Wim Hof. So, I got to take a pee break. Can you pause that?
You peeing is
Absolutely.
allowed. You can just keep it going if you want.
You can talk behind my back. I remember just hearing the other day that some more body count for the Clintons. Some talking about some guy that was, I shouldn't say the lawyer or something, but somebody who was deeply affiliated with them was found dead, committed suicide by shooting himself in the head 2 times. That's talent. That poor guy should have killed himself. He is good.
Jesus.
2
Him
times.
and Epstein.
Holy,
Epstein
I
committed
know. What
suicide too, right?
I mean, talk about the criminal justice system. How poor. I mean, they are running the show, man. You know, it's really bad. Like, they go and they Trump's home, but Hillary Clinton, she like deleted her emails, acid washed the disk. Oh, nothing to see here.
Right.
Wow, that's just so hurtful to me as an American. Like,
What do you do? This is like not at all related to anything we're talking about, but it's something that I'm curious about. As I'm getting a little bit older, I feel a little bit more responsibility as far as like the direction of the country.
good for
right?
you.
Or
'Cause that's how-
society.
I respect that deeply.
There's corruption, right?
Yeah.
And we have growing corruption within the United States, within Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
Yeah.
As an individual, do you have any idea of like...
No.
No?
I have no idea what to do. You know, they say one person at a time, right? But let's think about it. You know, it's like, I think, who was that psychologist that said God is dead? Nietzsche?
I think.
And he basically, it wasn't like a play against God. It was basically like, now that everybody has taken God out of society, the whole thing's going to cave in. And he predicted like the communism killing millions and millions of people.
Right.
Yeah, and I think maybe that has something to do with it, right? So for me, I believe in God and Jesus, and I don't hold to a particular denomination anymore, and I think they're all wrong, but they all have pieces that are right, you know, so it's a personal thing where you're trying to do the right thing. But what is the right thing? Because if you're a Muslim guy and you believe in Sharia law and you come to America and your daughter's dating a Westerner and you have the right to kill your daughter, that ain't going to work here. It's right for you, but it's not right. So, you know, what is right and wrong? So for me, my guidelines, my guardrails are Judeo-Christian ethics that gives me my support. Somebody just pulled up in front of your house.
Do you feel like...
Neighbor.
Probably our neighbor.
So that's...
Which I pulled some of their weeds, so he'll be
he's good. So that's that helps me focus on what is right and what is wrong. Back to the whole Muslim guy. So for him, that was right.
Yep.
But for me, it's wrong.
Well, the crossing of the cultures is kind of what creates the issue there.
Yeah, I wrote a big episode. Not an episode. It was a big story on multiculturalism. I called it an essay. That was the name I'm looking for, and I just finished it. I'll email it to you, and you can read it.
Yeah.
So e pluribus unum, out of many one. Hey, I'm all for it, right? You come from all around the world and keep your language and teach it to your kids, but when you come to America, you should consider being American first. Like, out of many, one. We need to be one.
Yeah.
One unit for survival.
We need the diversity, but we also need
inclusivity.
Yeah.
So, what's your opinion on separation of church and state as far as America goes?
Give me more. I know what the term is.
So it's more of like, how much should religion and politics tango and make the rules for our society?
Maybe it should be per state. Like, instead of a federal, it should be state to see what works in each state.
So for an example, like if Texas wanted to bring in a little bit more religion into their stuff, like we're kind of seeing right now, especially with their school systems.
Yeah.
And then you have like Arizona where it's like, no God in these halls of this schooling, for example.
Right. I think it's part of the problem, Weston, right? Because if you're not necessarily teaching a Christian ideology of a particular denomination, but you're just saying, going by like the Ten Commandments and this is our heritage, and you might be more or less likely to commit crimes. Because if you really feel like God is watching, that might inhibit you or prohibit you or give you the necessary oomph to not commit particular crimes.
So do you feel like that just because like religion says it's wrong, that laws are not as viable to people just because they might come from more of a religious background?
Tell me more. I'm not following you exactly.
So like, let's say from like a religious standpoint, you have the commandments where you cannot kill thy neighbor. Right. But you also have laws that are in state that says, hey, don't fucking kill Billy across the road because he pissed on your lawn or something like that.
And it was that law.
Do you feel like there's a little bit more of a fundamental difference between the two just because of where they came from and how they're integrated into today's society?
Try it from a different angle.
So English common law. So here's where I think part of the difference is, or part of the difficulty is our nation is founded on religious ideas. Right? And so, but it's a religious tradition. So it's difficult to have the separation of church and state because our tradition is a religious tradition.
Right.
So where's the line that you draw from you're allowing the tradition, which is good? So like the English common law, and I'll explain that in a second. You're allowing the tradition, but you're not allowing the religion part of it. So it's difficult, and I think every state and every community kind of draws that line a little bit differently of what's allowed and what isn't allowed as far as school, as far as government.
Sure. Well, think of the left, right? The left has become a religion in a sense, from my perspective, right? You're going to gravitate to something. So back to the church and the state, I think if I recall, if it was correct, it was maybe Thomas Jefferson, the Danbury Church from Danbury, Connecticut, wrote a letter, could have been the Jefferson, because they were Baptists and they were concerned about, hypothetically, the Catholics holding them down and not letting them get jobs and permission in governance. So they're like, he said there's a separation between church and state. But it wasn't in the Constitution, it's not in the Bill of Rights, it's more of an ideology. Like, we're free now. You could be a Catholic, you could be a Muslim, you could be an atheist, we're all working together.
Sure. So
don't worry about the state suppressing you because of a particular denomination. That's how I understand it.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So the English common law, right, is sort of a precedence thing. So if 4,000 years ago, that's too long, but if a long time ago, we had an argument about how to separate our property line,
right?
Then we're going to have a trial. We're going to go and do the legal process. And then whatever is decided on that, going forward, we're going to use that as a baseline of what we're going to say is the correct law.
That's the precedence, right? The precedence.
So then you build up over time this huge book, right? 10 Commandments. Huge book of laws that you have to follow.
Yeah, because the Jews got up to past the Ten Commandments, went up to 690 or 660 or some giant plethora of laws to follow. So
that's like the I guess the point that I'm trying to make is like the English common law is the secular version of the Ten Commandments, or the secular version of the religious tradition.
Or an offshoot of the...
Sure.
Yeah. But I want to go back to Weston.
Sorry,
tell me more of... Come from a different angle. What are your fear? What do you... Tell me more so I can kind of melt with you.
I don't know how you feel, but like I feel like a really good example of this kind of happening in the world right now is the Roe versus Wade thing.
Okay.
A lot of people that are against it are coming from a religious background, even though like I don't know how you feel about it, and I don't want to offend you in any way if you do feel this way about
it.
But
Brother, you're fine.
Okay. So, I kind of think it's bullshit that people can tell other people what to do with their bodies. Because I feel like at the end of the day, everybody should have their own choice for what they want to do with their body. And they want to do things like that with their body, then that's up to them.
Right.
And I think it's wrong for people to come up and be like, you're a killer, you're wrong, you shouldn't do that with your body because I say so, because my beliefs are against that.
So, to tie in with you, you're how did you feel about the vaccine mandates?
I don't think it's right.
I agree.
It's this exact same
thing. Right?
Like,
my body, right.
If you want to do it, great. If you don't want to do it, respect. Like, either way, whatever you want to do, it's your body.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to put something into your body that you do not want to. You shouldn't have to take something out of your body if
you know what I think? I'm with you. And it's a hard area, right? Because from a society viewpoint, like whatever you do to your body is your body. But sociologically, as a group, as an American country, if we see you, if someone looks at it like you're actually killing a baby, they're not necessarily concerned about you and your body, they're concerned about the unborn, right? And then you might think, well, what about geriatrics? If we go that far, could it potentially lead to, well, you're 82 years old, you're 81 years old, Fauci, you have no, we got to get rid of you, buddy, you know? But there was a point I really wanted to make back to that. So keep talking, it'll pop back into my head.
So, like, as an example, there's certain scenarios where, like, you start splitting hairs and whatnot. It's like...
Oh, I got it. I remember. May I?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, when they came out with the Roe versus Wade, later on, the lady who said that she was molested by her husband, her uncle or something, which was the impetus of the trial, she actually confessed that it was contrived. Right? But
I know what story you're talking about.
Which doesn't take away, but here we go. Because I think that had a lot of validity, meaning I was raped by my uncle, and I don't want to carry the baby.
Right.
And you're like, I got you. But then again, right, the fear is, which ties into the whole gun thing I'll share with you a little bit later, momentarily. I think the fear is, if you allow for that, and then it's going to be the next, and like right now they have partial birth abortion. So the majority of us were in agreement, like, hey, you know, there's certain scenarios where abortion should be fine. And then there's a part of the culture that says, but if we allow this, then it's going to go to B, and then B will go to C, and C will go to Z, which is we're going to get an abortion at 9 months. Because there's certain states where you could actually abort the baby as long as the head is the body, or the head was still in there, or holy Christ. So that's the fear, right? So where do you draw the line, like with guns? Like, you don't need an AR. Okay, I don't. I hunt, I got a shotgun, I got a rifle, I don't need an AR.
Right.
But then they get that, then they go, well, you don't need a shotgun that's semi-automatic. And that...
Give you an inch and take them out.
Because that's like, right, that's the whole thing with the whole abortion, because it literally went to partial birth abortion. So I think, I'm not even sure, I think there's a large part of religious people that are concerned about killing the child. But there's also other portions that are not from a religious perspective, but like, this is where it's going to go. Like, if we allow that, you know, or like, how come they don't let people do a suicide pill, right? Because then if you're dying of cancer and there's no hope, why not give the guy a pill? Makes sense to me. But then there's another group of humans who go, but if they do it this time, then it's going to open the door. We're going to go from A to B to C to like, well, he's not contributing to society anymore, and he's
just in pain every day.
And he's a drain. Chance. Yeah, we're gonna lessen the criteria for you to be able to act yourself. So I think my opinion is I think it's great for the state. I like it that it's a state, like some states will allow it and some states won't. Now, that might sound hypocritical, but I think I think that's. I think it's better for society. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of women out there who are going to hear this. They'll be mad at me, and I'm not trying to get you mad. I'm just a person trying to think about it myself. Going, isn't it? Like, especially if you lived in New England, where you could just drive 20 minutes and go to Massachusetts out loud, but you could drive to Connecticut and get one. Okay,
right.
But maybe that'll stop people just getting abortions because they're lazy and they didn't take their pill. You know, that's really complicated, right? But in the end, it's really a human being. I remember was it first grade teacher, Miss Fitzgerald. We had a sex ed class, and she said, now that none of you are pregnant, you know, or your kids, maybe he was younger, maybe it was first grade, I don't remember. What do you think now? Because you're not going to be under the gun where you actually are pregnant, or your girlfriend actually is pregnant. So what do you think? And I remember at that time thinking, yeah, what's wrong with having taking an RU486 pill for the first couple months? It's just it's like a cell. I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. But I can't kill a 9-month-old baby, especially when you have kids. Like when you have a baby and you watch that thing get born, it changes your outlook.
No, I'm sure it does. Just like we're not going to understand women's thoughts and processes the same because we don't have the equipment, so we don't understand.
Are you sure? Because I heard men can get pregnant now. I don't know. It's like going around.
Someone's going to have to do some explaining then. But yeah, to kind of go on top of that too, like I feel like because we kind of glanced over a couple of scenarios that are like the gray areas, like what if a girl gets raped by her uncle or whatnot.
Sure.
But what if a girl like just realistically like gets pregnant, but is like, I'm not fit to be a mother. I'm not financially fit to give this child a proper childhood.
So in that scenario, then you'll know you missed your first month period, and then you got to go. You know what? I'm going to take the test.
Right.
And then you got to be a responsible human being and go, for the sake of that infant that's growing. It's a lot easier for me to act you now when you're just when you're a handful of cells,
right?
Than when you actually formed into a body. That's harder, because you could adopt it. You could give birth. People are going to Russia and China and Africa to adopt babies. I mean, you could carry it full term and then give it away.
There you go.
That's a possibility.
So I guess, like, kind of going from that topic back to the original topic about the separation of church and state, do you think that it's acceptable for people that come from a very high morale religious background to come in with their beliefs and let that be the spearhead of trying to change the way that the United States works as a whole?
Well said, right? Because in a sense, it seems to me that's why we're so dysfunctional now, because we kicked God out of the school, we kicked him out of the courts. So I think, from my personal experience, when everything was going good, and American society was calm, and then you start to look at the Catholics, and you're like, oh, you guys why are you allowing your pedophile priests to go back into a parish? That person needs to be thrown in jail.
And like covering it up in some situations.
So then how about you Presbyterians, you do infant baptism, and how about you Mormons, you do this, and how about you Methodists, you don't believe in war, and then you kind of do the infighting. And then I was part of that. I thought I waved the flag for non-denominational church, and I thought I was the best, and I would try to find the things that were wrong with you and try to enlighten you. And then when the whole thing fell apart and there is no religion, then you're like, okay, my Mormon brother, come on over. We had some values, whether you're Presbyterian or Catholic or whatever, we still have some common denominators that hold us together. So it's kind of funny, the hypocrisy in my own mind, but I think that's human nature, right? Like if the whole entire country was Catholic and Methodist, with no exceptions, you would do the infighting. And then, if that was reversed and you had 600 million Muslims come over and they're putting Sharia law into effect, then the Catholic and the Methodist would become buddies and forget the little fights, squabbles, and go, hey, this is a bigger issue. We don't want Sharia law in our culture.
Right. I don't know, when I was growing up, I've told Scotty this, I've told a number of people about it. I've had a very diverse raising, I suppose I could put it. I come from a Mormon family, but over the generations, it's kind of lessened up on
watered
convictions down and whatnot.
Yeah.
Kind of starting with my grandfather, who practiced and went to church and stuff, but drank beer, smoked, still did everything. And then that kind of went to my dad that didn't really go to church and whatnot. And then I came out. And it's funny because I have 2 older sisters. I have 7 sisters in general, but for this sake, from my dad's spawn, it's me and my 2 sisters. My oldest sister, complete atheist. My sister that's older than me in the middle, more so religious. And then I'm here in the middle, just kind of like, I'm not sure. Because I'm very open to religious experiences. I have never had one, but I'm accepting of the idea of something. But I just haven't had it yet. And
so I think that term would be agnostic, right?
Agnostic,
you believe in something, not sure what it is.
Right, but at the end of the day, I've always been more of the opinion that I've gotten from my father that no matter what you do, as long as you're a good person, you're not a dick to anybody, you're going to go where you deserve to go.
I believe that 100%, and that's how I live my life today. I don't. I went to seminary. I was a youth pastor. I was big into evangelism, bringing people to the Lord, and I've since strayed from that to where I'm like, if you wanted to talk, like I think there are people who are open to the idea and the people who are not. And the people who are not, okay, we don't even need to talk about it. Right. But if you're open, let's talk. And again, I'm not, before I would come from a viewpoint, I'm trying to get you to believe what I believe. And I don't believe that anymore. Now I'm like, it's okay, you are your own man. And you go, what common denominators do we have? You know?
Right.
And let's just enjoy each other through that. Because I agree, I think, I read a book once called, gosh, it had to do with heaven. I forgot the title. Something with heaven. I bought that book. There's a customer on my mail route, Micah, and 11460 South Santa Fe Lane, Goodyear, Arizona 853.
That is a hell of a memory, Mike. Good God.
He gave me this book about people who went to heaven, Muslim, Buddhists, Christians, and it was really, really, really interesting. And I bought that book for probably 10 different people. John Oliveira, just before he passed. So you wonder, I hope that had some, because I do believe in heaven. I do, you know. And I'm with you. You live a good, clean life. Doesn't matter if you went to church or not. You know, if you, what is a good, clean life? See, again, right, because that Muslim thinks he's living a good, clean life by killing his daughter. And from me, my perspective, that's not true. So it's complicated, but you got to let people do their own thing. And love them, regardless. Well, I'm not going to love a murderer. You come and kill my family, I'm not going to love you. I would have trouble forgiving you for that. But the book was really interesting about experiences that people have who went to heaven and came back. What if they're true? Like, my stories aren't true. You know, there'll be people out there, well, it was you were sleeping, you were sleepwalking when you saw the demon. Maybe, you know, and maybe these people, I don't know. But I don't imagine that your brain would, over evolution, if evolution was true without any creation, and it was just amoebas to a human being today over 4.5 billion years, I don't think your brain would develop a release of the euphoric feelings and visions of heaven, because you're going to be dead. You're not going to be passing that on.
Right.
You know what I mean? What genetic? I don't think. To me, that doesn't make any logical sense. That you develop that. So I get pleasure and comfort and safety out of feeling, yeah, there is heaven. And my life is a lot easier because I do believe in heaven. I don't believe I'm going there because I'm a Presbyterian or a Mormon or a Catholic. I think, like you alluded to, you live in a good life. Love your neighbor as yourself. You know, and give God credit. I tell God, thank you all. I mean, look at that sky. Look at those fluffy clouds. Look at life is just so wonderful, and it's even hard to find words to describe what it is to look into the world that we, you know, my tortoise had babies. You know, I picked one up yesterday. I was telling my wife, I go, look at that. Number one, it crawled out of the ground. It was buried like 10, 12 inches under the soil. How did it know which way was up? Well, maybe because the soil was loose and it went to the path of least resistance. But how did you breathe? How did you have the energy? Because you're expending energy clawing your way through. And the soil was hard out here, that caliche soil. And you clawed your way out to get your first breath of air. That's wonderful. That's life, you know. So my life is fuller because I believe in God and believe in His Son, Jesus Christ. So I've matured to the point where I don't hold particular denomination as the only way. I don't think anybody knows, really. I studied it. I must have, honestly, 50,000 hours of Bible study. Listening to the Presbyterians and the Methodists and the Catholics. 50,000 hours, because that was really important to me. And I was trying to build a picture, a puzzle of what. And I don't think anybody really knows. I think they're bits and pieces, you know. So what are the common denominators of truth? Kind of like your spirit, you'll know. Yeah, you know. I'm not gonna go bomb my neighbor's house. I'm not gonna do that.
Right. It sounds like you value personal choice, personal opinion, and like personal experience very highly. So you believe in that. You take your open-mindedness into valuing someone else's experience, someone else's human experience.
Amen to that. Well said. Yeah, don't put them in a box. You know, let them be them. Let them grow. It's their own life and their own experience, which even means more if there's heaven after. I think it would be real. How about this? Imagine, so if God is outside of time and space, outside of the universe, so he's not affected by time. So you die, your spirit goes to this other place. It's a different universe, different dimension. I don't know. Let's just say heaven for an easy word. And you get there, and you're living outside of time and space, and then you have the opportunity to go back and witness things in time. Would be really cool, right? You're like, I'm going to go see Moses part the Red Sea. You can't interact, but you could be there invisible in a sense. How cool would that be? I'm going to go on Leif Erikson's, ship and see the people, how they lived. Who built them pyramids, Oh,
yeah.
How cool would that be? Like, that kind of gives you hope. That gives you a reason to do the right thing. Now, you don't know if that's going to be true, right? But what are the experiences out there that guide you to do right and wrong, So at first you did the right thing because you didn't want your dad to put on his boot and kick you in the ass, right? There's consequences. So you want the path of least resistance, maybe less suffering. So maybe you're doing the right thing so you suffer less, which is true, right? Like you speed down the road, you're doing 80 and a 50, you can get arrested, they get your car evicted, whatever. Impounded. So you're like, I'm not gonna speed.
So I have a great question for you from this background. So do you view life as more an experience to be sought after, or just something like I'm setting you on this path for experience from the standpoint of God, mind you?
Yeah.
Or I'm putting you in this life as a test. Which one would you think more?
I think they're both the same.
So an experience and a test.
Yep.
Okay.
I think about that all the time, and I think that makes logical sense to me. Like, how cool, if heaven is true, and there's all this pain and suffering on earth, and you are created to experience these things through testing, to be valuable when you get outside of where we are today.
Interesting. Okay. I respect that answer.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah. Scott?
I have a lot to say about that.
You got some contrary things to say?
No. Different viewpoint. So, are you familiar with Alan Watts?
Mm-mm.
So, he popularized, I'll say, Eastern religious ideas in the United States and in the West in general.
Like Buddhism?
Sure.
Yeah, because you're a Buddhist, aren't you?
No, not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
I've listened to a lot, studied a lot.
I've looked a lot into Buddhism as well.
The way that Alan Watts put it, if I had to make it as concise as possible, is you are the universe experiencing itself or observing itself.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a conglomeration of everything that has come up until this point, right? You evolved, you were created essentially to observe what's happening in the universe. Another way of thinking about it, and he goes down, he says it a lot more eloquently than what I put it.
Sure, yeah.
But if you imagine, if you do a thought experiment, that you were all powerful, that you were God, right? You could do whatever you want, you could experience whatever you want. What would you do?
First thing, I would not want that to happen.
Sure. It's too much responsibility.
I don't want that at all, right?
But maybe you would, you would experience like the best life that you could. You'd be rich, you'd get to have sex with whoever you want, you bang all the girls, do all the drugs, and you'd have none of the consequences. So you get to do everything. You get to create planets and universes and all this stuff. But over time, eventually you sort of get bored, right? And so what do you do when you can do anything? Eventually you set yourself limitations, right? Well, what if I did all
for
this
your own
stuff?
sanity?
Exactly. You make it more interesting, right?
Yeah.
And eventually he walks down that line of thinking to, what if you were to create a situation or a simulation or an experience where you forgot that you were God? So you forgot that you had all these powers. You were just a limited person.
And or you didn't forget, but you limited yourself.
Exactly. So
Like,
that's the
hey,
idea.
Well, here's cool, right? Because that's what
Right.
Christ is supposedly, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so Christ is God's Son incarnate, or actually part of Trinity, part of God, and he divulged himself of the power and became living flesh.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah,
That's interesting, right?
That's the Christian mythos, right? Is you can be this perfect because I was able to do it in human form. Essentially, that's like the Jordan Peterson.
Well, I
idea.
sure don't go for perfection. I think I would tell everybody, don't try to be perfect.
It's
Don't do it.
impossible.
Don't do it. Yeah, you won't enjoy your life as much.
Have either one of you heard of the egg theory?
Chicken or the egg?
No, different
Which came
one.
first?
I forget exactly the whole philosophy of what it's called and whatnot, but basically every single life is lived out by the same spirit, but isn't aware of past and future experiences. So I could be in this body right now, but at some point in a different part, I would experience everything that you experience and forget about this one. And the accumulation of everything that would happen would get basically assert to godhood.
Completely agree in this avenue, like what Scott said. So the Holy Spirit of God is that spirit in all of us humans. So God is actually living through you and you and you, and then maybe you wouldn't be bored. Like say God is real, and he was bored, and he's like, I'm going to make these people, and I'm going to live vicariously, in a sense, respectfully, through each person to feel their feelings, to feel something, right, and to experience your existence. And there's billions and billions of us. I would imagine that would be entertainment. Forget ETVV. What do they call it? Entertainment TV? God's like, oh, I got an idea. Let me do this.
That's the infinite game.
How about
Life is the infinite game.
Yeah. What were those stories of the Nephilim in the Bible?
The
The
Nephilim.
Nephilim.
Yeah.
And also in Diablo.
Also in Diablo.
Talk to me about your idea with that. The Nephilim.
I like to think that a lot of things, especially when we could look at the older parts of the Bible, there's jokes that we made back in the day about Old Testament God and being furious,
Ruthless.
and ruthless. Use cheat codes. The Nephilim, I think, could have been like kind of a pet project necessarily.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Maybe being like, well, I've seen how they developed here. Like, what if I was to upgrade them,
Boost
Right.
them up.
boost them up, see what would happen? And I think that certain parties in history have looked at that. Nazis probably being one of them.
Right,
as
for sure.
Ubermen,
For sure.
the superior race, and like it's kind of escalated from that. But I think that could have been a possible reasoning for the Nephilim, but
Yeah.
also like protectors, perhaps, because obviously God is not just one whole being. Like there's other parts of the coin, the other side of the coin, because there's like the devil and evil forces and whatnot, or things that we might not even be aware of, because there's always like science fiction, the void of space containing like Cthulhu or whatever, like the other side or the upside down, whatever you want. Like there could be anything, and maybe he had a failsafe of Nephilim for when shit could hit the fan. That's an idea.
Sure. I can't recall the exact place, but the sons of God found the daughters of men beautiful and came down and had sex with them. So one theory is the demonic side, or the spirits of God, angels that disobeyed God, came down and habitated with women and created supernatural people. And then you get the Minotaurs, the Greek mythology, and
The Greek mythos,
the Egypt, what are the Horus?
Sure.
Right.
Horus, Bastet. There's
Ra,
a million.
right? Ra, the sun god.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that being said, there's a lot of symbolism between all the other ancient religions and their person dying and coming back. I'll come back again. It's very common throughout history.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
That's distilled down into our own culture. That's been distilled down into our own culture. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
But it's not really working too good, right? Our culture today.
No.
I think our culture today is complacent on religious ideas and whatnot. And also, like, when you come down to a whole where you have so many different ideas that could conflict with each other, because obviously, like, you put a Christian in the same room as a Buddhist, they're going to have different ideologies on pretty much most things, to be honest with you. And it's like that for most religions, but they can find common ground between each other. And I think a lot of people nowadays are too bullheaded to want to come to the agreement of what they agree on because their gods are just too different, even though really a lot of the ideas could be the same.
Right.
When you have 1,000 different religions and you speak 1,000 different languages and you can't find one thing to unify,
there'll be
and you're all trying to build a tower.
A Babel?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that describes where we're at in
Meaning?
the United States.
Oh, tell me more.
Also, like, just really quick, that too, but also money.
Sure.
Money's a huge thing with our country right now. And I feel like that's almost, it's a religion in itself.
I agree 100%.
Sure.
But
the
please continue.
God is dead thing. So the meaning behind that, yes, the meaning behind that is when we killed God, or when we took the metaphysical foundations out of our society. So we stopped basing our choices and our culture around religion. That, what do you call it? That compulsion or the natural instinct to seek religious ideas and to have that as a cultural cornerstone, that is going to go somewhere. That instinct is going to go somewhere. So maybe it goes into politics, or maybe it goes into the pursuit of money or the pursuit of material things.
Right. Yep.
Wherever that goes, that religious idea is going to go somewhere. And because there's not a set guideline or a set foundation for our culture, it goes into 1,000 different places.
Correct.
And you can't shake someone's bedrock.
Correct.
Right? You can't shake. And so if you don't have a unifying idea to bring everyone together, 100%. Then you have 1,000 languages, then you have a Tower of Babel.
And then you degrade into discourse and civil unrest, and you have what we have today.
Exactly.
Because even the Ten Commandments, right? Even if you're not religious, they make sense. You know?
Sure.
Don't commit murder, because if you do...
How to live in a stable society. Follow these 10 steps.
Right.
Yeah, hey, word it that way. They've been around for thousands of years. They work.
So I don't know if you guys want to keep going, but I have a great way to wrap up, if you guys feel like it.
How about you? Are you done?
I think we covered most of everything that I had in mind. But
the thing is, I think I could talk to you for the rest of all time.
Agreed.
We could pause it and then go in the house in the AC and talk more, or you could end it. I'm good either way.
So
I have time.
I wanted to read something from your
expose
autobiography.
Okay.
Something that I thought was really, it resonated with me, right? And this was basically around one of the times that you were going through one of the most difficult times, or the more difficult times, with your Lyme disease, and we're having a bunch of I'll call it negative experiences or whatever. But anyway, so I'm gonna read this really quick to set it up. I was completely alone. Best place to be, to commune with God. Judd Smith would call every now and again and sincerely ask me what was going on. He was the only one. My 2 children would try to help. God bless those 2. I miss throwing the ball, playing catch, or having energy to spend with them. Now they're older and that time has passed, gone forever. At least I was alive. So if you think you tried to assist me in my time of need, you did not. So folks, maybe you should ask hurting friends if they would benefit from dialogue about their situation. Some people like to keep it personal. Others, like me, enjoy and heal from talking. I have no sympathy for artificial virtue signaling and pretense. If you have strong, engaged people in your camp, let them know how grateful you are. Time is short. Encouragement and sincerity would have helped me. I read that and I was like, holy shit, you're reading my mind. Right?
That's a hell of a statement.
What I wanted to say is I think that you are the strong and engaged person that has been in my camp for the last 2 years. And I really appreciate you.
I love you, brother. Yeah. Yep, that's which led to our friendship and the ease of suffering in our own lives because we have someone there to lift you up in your time of need just by understanding and letting you talk and letting you listen, and you feel I'm not alone, you know. Metaphorically speaking, you're in the tribe, you're out in the woods, and you're trying to survive. You need the tribe, man. You need the women to flush the beaver hide. You need the men to go fishing. You need the other men to go fight off the bad guys that are coming to try to take all your goods that you stored for the winter. So you need society, but people need to be. Maybe love is the right word. You want to be loved, and that means respected and friendship. But again, you know, really how this whole thing started because you took the time to read my story. It took me 3 years to write that story, waiting for the right moments of clarity and trying to put it down, and I'm really busy. And you go through all that and you're done, and you can't wait for your friends and family to read it, and they don't have the time. And you're disappointed again. He was like, that was a waste. And then you get somebody that goes, I read that, thank you. And then, oh, you did? Thanks, man. And then it builds a friendship, and it builds, I have someone in my camp. I have someone there to talk with, for lack of a better word. So
I think that you have a lot to share, and the stuff that we talked about today, maybe, who knows if anybody ever listened to this, but maybe someone will hear it, right? And they'll actually get something out of it, whether it's taking care of your immune system or sleeping or all the people we talked about.
Or they have a family member who's sick,
yep.
And you go, would you like me to talk to you about this, or would you like to keep it to yourself?
Yep. Let
them tell you, because some people heal by talking. You actually care about me? Thank you. Let me, and then that gives you energy because you don't feel alone.
Yeah.
And then some human beings are different. Like, this is my own thing. I keep it to myself. Okay, that's cool too, because that's what you need. So you don't know what the person needs unless you ask, and that you can just ask in a very friendly way, non-confrontational. Hey, would you like to talk? I could ask you every week, once a week, every day, or I won't mention it. Because sometimes not mentioning it, like when I talked about Lyme for a long time, it brought me down. It was a negative power. Like I read my story last night to remind myself, and I didn't want to read it today because it would have brought me down.
Sure.
But I wanted to have enough energy to at least communicate openly and with some enthusiasm on the podcast and not being negative. So for me, that was a negative, dark experience. But when people talk about it, like you, my other friends, it becomes something useful, and I grow from that. Like if people had known and would be encouraging me, I remember like Justin at the post office, he's a rural carrier, Justin, and he said one day, if anybody can beat Lyme disease, you can. Man, he doesn't know me that well, but that was energy for me. That was power. I took that and it made me stronger, right? So that's what this human being, me, needs to heal. And other people don't.
You need that support.
Yeah, and what exactly is support, right?
Sure.
Yeah, that's a gray area too. I don't like if you talk about it too much, it brings you down, right? So it's complicated, but in the end, it was disappointing with the family, just generally speaking, not just my wife and kids, but
sure.
Friends and family. Like. Because you look healthy, it's like you got a virus on that nice computer right now. Mm-hmm. The outside is brand new and shiny, like fucking looks great to me. Great. What are you complaining about? But you're hitting that keypad and it ain't functioning. You're like, the virus is affecting the way that functions.
Right.
And anybody can look at it and go, looks fine to me. Sissy, suck it up, buttercup. Right. And that's not true. So.
I appreciate you, Mike.
Appreciate you too, Scott. Weston.
Final thoughts, Weston? What do you think of Mike?
You are a fascinating individual. I'm so happy to finally meet you. I definitely look forward to every conversation we have here on out.
Thank you very much.
And thank you so much for your time today. It's been awesome.
My pleasure. I'll be here anytime you need me.
Awesome. Absolutely.
A couple of years from now when you guys are famous, don't forget me.
All
Goodbye, everybody.